Hello, everybody. Nice to see you. Good to be back. Nice to be here. We're down the Lachlan Crossing, down the Ryan Lindley today. But that's okay because we got a special guest, and I'm excited to talk to this cat. But welcome to the program again. My name is Dean. Big day today. You know what we do as people? You know what we do? We spend the majority of our time shitting on people we don't know. We spend the majority of our time drawing conclusions about things in and around our vicinity or that happen to capture our purview. And then what we do is we like to bludgeon people with those purviews. We like to take it out on others. And it happens every way. It happens every day. It doesn't stop. It's left versus right, right versus left, you versus me versus them, us versus each other, to the point where it's legitimately you versus yourself now. That's all this is, right? Isn't that what makes people happy now? Isn't what makes people happy just taking huge dumps and swipes on people and deciding who's worth what? And then telling everybody that they can't participate in life anymore, or telling people that they're not worth it, or telling people they're useless. Isn't that what we do here? That's the fun stuff, isn't it? I don't find it that fun anymore, to be honest with you. Like, I don't. And I've said that a few times now. Sure, is it fun to rip guys who give it to themselves, like the Anthony Furies of the world or the John Kays of the world? Dude, I did that this morning. It's still a lot of fun. But to me, it's a game. And over the past, I would say 2 years, we've all devolved into these things, these like memes of these things that we think other people want us to be. And we have spent, I would say since early March 2020, 2.5, maybe almost 3 solid years, hardening ourselves and becoming massive assholes in the process. So it's done a few things for us, right? You know, the pandemic. Tasty beverage drink. It's steeled our resolve. It's made us think. It's made us reach. It's made us look for communities. It's made us decide what we think and feel. And some people have completely changed. Some people haven't. Some have decided to fight objective reality. Some have decided to move on with their lives. But generally speaking, it's made us all terrible people, like absolutely awful people. So about a week and a half ago, I'm sitting here at my desk working, and I'm like, fuck, I can't keep shit posting like this. I just can't keep doing it. And I had shit posted one of the organizers of the Convoy, the Ottawa Convoy. And his name's Tom Marazzo. And as I'm shit posting him, I'm thinking, there's no end to this. This is just going to continue to make me a worse person if I keep doing this. And so about a week and a half, maybe a week ago, I reached out to Tom and I'm like, dude, I think we got to talk. Somebody's got to talk to somebody here. And it has to be a public conversation. He believes things I don't. I believe things he doesn't. He's done things I don't like. I've done things he doesn't like. He's firmly convinced in his opinion and his position. I'm firmly convinced in my position and opinion. We had never talked, but we took those opinions and took them out on each other, which everybody does on a daily basis. And that doesn't mean to say that I don't believe or am going to believe other people, or we have to make space for people to listen. If you don't want to, and if you don't have the mental fortitude, or you feel like you're triggered, or if you've got this idea in your head of like, oh, I can't because I'll just freak out. Listen, this is not about freaking out. I asked Tom if he'd come on the show and he graciously agreed. We both apologized to each other for the year's worth of shit posting. And we decided it was time to talk, you know, and I took a lot of flack for that. I think he took a lot of flack for that. He's been warned. I've been warned. But we stayed the course, and we decided, hey, listen, let's get to know exactly what this is, because I can tell you this, when you live in a silo and you don't get out of your silo, you don't really get any better. Discourse is the only way to education. Education happens when you talk, and conversations are the most important part. So without further ado, please welcome to the program, 20-year military veteran, convoy organizer, someone who has views diametrically opposed to mine in certain situations, but that's just one area of life, is it not? Please welcome Mr. Tom Marazzo. And yes, Tom does get a round of applause. I give it to him. Yes. How many warnings did you get about this? How many people said, don't do it, Tommy?
I got
don't
yeah.
do it.
I got dozens. I got dozens of warnings, right?
Yeah.
But you know what? Something just said to me, do it, because I've always been advocating for respectful discourse. And I know, I mean, first and foremost, we're relatively young guys. We're going to talk some shit. Like that's what guys will do. You get into a certain groove, start jamming, and there'll be yeah, there'll be some stuff like, but at the end of the day, I mean, you really you gotta be willing to sit down and talk about what's going on. Otherwise, I mean, it gets really nasty. And my side my side can get pretty nasty too. Your side, and I'm just, sides is just kind of a very loose term, right?
Yeah.
People on the opposite side. Yeah, I mean, we can get both sides of the perspective can get really nasty when they want to.
Yeah.
And even me, I called Justin Trudeau a pig on one of my Twitters. That's about as bad as I've got. I contain it, but I had reasons that I didn't like that guy, and I
You
still
were.
have the same reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
think you worked in some capacity for the government for a long period of time, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I actually joined the army. I joined the reserves when I was 16,
You
and
did.
yeah, I was still
Why?
16. I was in my 17th year. Why? I wanted to be a pilot. I
Fighter
wanted
pilot?
to- yeah, well, I didn't care. I just wanted to fly something.
Mhm.
And I failed the eye exam years later when I joined the regular force. And then years later, I redid the eye exam, and they said, "Oh, you got 20/20 vision." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Yeah, and they said, "Well, because I was right on the border of like the vision," and they were so they were saying, "Well, the doctor was probably conservative because you were so close to the line." Um, that they figured eventually your eyes would go bad and you wouldn't be able to fly anyway. So why spend the millions of dollars training you? I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that's great. That's just great."
Yeah, it
So
wasn't worth the dough. Thanks a lot, pricks.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I remember doing the eye exam, and I said, "You're telling me all these years I've been digging holes, living underground, when I could have been miles above the earth, flying in a really cool airplane?" She's like, "Yeah, I hate to tell you, but
Did that
that's the
piss
way
you
it is."
off?
It did. It did. It really did, because when I tried to remuster a pilot. I was a combat engineer, and I tried to remuster a pilot, and they opened it up for a V2, they call it, so vision category 2. So that's basically your first level of having to wear glasses. And so I reapplied, tried to remuster a pilot, and I made it within the top 5 applicants across all the other officers that were trying to get in, at about 22 or 23 applicants.
Mhm.
And they didn't take anybody that was currently serving. I had staff college. I was already qualified up to lieutenant colonel, had all my everything I needed to get promoted, except I couldn't speak French. I still can't speak French hardly at all. And yeah, I had everything I needed, but none of us got selected, and they took 60 civilians off the street. So, good thing, because, all these years later, I would have still been serving in the military for one more year, had I not gone out medically. I left medically in 2015.
What was
But
the medical reason for your leave?
2001, I had a really bad parachute landing, and dislocated my ankle. It traveled up into my hip, and it tore my labrum.
Mhm.
And it went 13 years undiagnosed. So, when you're running around doing all your military stuff, carrying rucksacks, and uh, trying to get by with all your stuff, still perform your duties, it just makes the injury worse and worse and worse. So finally, I got a MRI on my hip after 13 years of going to physio, chiro, and all that stuff. They said, "Man, you needed surgery to repair your labrum. You'll never repair a torn labrum in your hip." So now I had hip surgery, and I it screwed up my lower back and everything, and I got some neck problems now too. So
Okay, so you get medical leave, like you had
mhm.
injuries accrued during your time of
Yeah,
service in
yeah,
this country. You were in the
yeah,
army, or sorry, you're
yep.
paratrooper. You're a paratrooper for like 20 years. Is that correct?
No, no. I was lucky. I got on my basic parachute course. Um, you know, I I would have loved to. Like, I would have gone to a parachute unit if that was, possible. I actually wanted to be a combat diver. But as an officer, it's like the window of opportunity to get in and become a combat diver is extremely, like, basically you get 2 chances in your career, and you better be available to go on that. And both times I wasn't available to even go on the course.
Mhm.
Um, but the selection for it is pretty brutal. It's not like Navy SEALs, but I mean, let's just say it's about 50% of that,
Okay.
um, for the selection for that. But it's when you're an officer, that's the problem, right? I always tell people, if you're going to join the army,
Mhm.
go as a non-commissioned member, do all the fun stuff you want to do, and then commission, and become an officer. That way, you're not, you're basically watching all the pitch go by. Like you don't get to do the fun stuff. You're the guy doing tactics and stuff like that. So in administrative stuff.
Yeah.
So you don't get to do the fun stuff as an officer.
Yeah, but you did, and you were there 20 years in the Army?
25. Yeah, I did 25.
Years,
yeah,
and you walk out at what, 2014,
2015? 15. I left 2015.
2015.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I made the promotion list to major my last year, but I was on a a permanent medical category. Mm-hmm. So in those days, you weren't allowed to be promoted if you were on a temporary or permanent medical category. But now they'll do it, right? They'll allow you to get promoted if you're on a medical category. But in my case, the last year, and I'm like, well, I'm not sticking around for, an extra $2,000 a year. It's just, I don't care at this point. So
what did you do when you left? What did you decide to do when you left the Army? What was your
so Veterans Affairs in Canada, because we don't have a military culture in any way, shape, or form. Canadians know nothing about their military other than their Uncle Bob who served. And Tom, you must know my Uncle Bob. He was high up. I think he was a corporal or a general or something like that. Yeah. Right. I get that. We get that all the time. But
you know my uncle?
Yeah, exactly. And the strange thing is,
from Wainwright. Do you know him in Wainwright? He's a fighter too. My nephew just joined the service. He's out in Cold Lake. Do you know him?
Yeah, well, believe it or not, sometimes it does actually.
Sometimes it works
because we're so. Yeah, I mean, our entire combined regular force, military or Army, Navy, Air Force, is about the same size, probably smaller right now than the New York City Police Department. That's the regular force, right? That's all of Canada, and then you've got some, reserve units all over the country, but it's not a very big military. So. I mean, I've only ever twice in my entire life had a job interview as a civilian where somebody had any affiliation to the military. So when I left the military in 2015, I put out 70 resumes and nobody would touch me. I had, I would say 2.5 interviews because the one, I got a second interview and then I never ended up getting the job. Like, because the civilian sector does not know what you can bring. They don't know what you are. They don't serve in the military, so they don't understand the context. Everything our public knows about the military, they learn from watching movies, right? And they're always American movies. So, we're very different. But, I left, I couldn't get a job. So, but I had the injury, so I can't stand for very long. Like as long as I'm active, like I'm moving around, I'm fine, but I can't stand in place for very long without a lot of chronic pain. So I got.
You smoke pot, by the way?
No, a lot of people have suggested it to me. I just can't.
Tom, you got to get on it.
I know.
You don't have to smoke it. You can eat it. You can drink it. I can rub it on your face. It'll make you feel good.
Yeah, people have given me like oils to rub on my hip and my back and stuff. And I'm like, okay, maybe, but I just, I never got around to it. I'm not against it. I mean, it's legal, and even when it was illegal, I didn't care what people do. That's, you do what you want to do. I always thought that the whole marijuana thing was like, okay, well, the only reason the government's in the alcohol business is because they make a boatload of money on it. The reason they're in the cigarette business is because they make a boatload of money on it. So put 2 and 2 together, you get marijuana. I don't understand the problem here.
Well, right? the problem for everybody, for them, was like the industrial complex, right? When they were like, see, again, look, we're finding some common ground here. You're like, I'd try weed. I'm like, I have some.
Yeah. Like I know lots of people, and I know a lot of veterans and a lot of, former retired police. I know a lot of people with PTSD. They all swear by cannabis and cannabis products and stuff. It's just not something I gravitate towards. That's the only issue, right? Is it doesn't interest me, but I'm not against it.
It was just a quick aside. It was I was just seeing if you're on the green stuff to see if you help with some of your chronic pain. I know it helps with that and anxiety and all the other stuff that human beings like you and I, whether you believe the same things or not, that we go through. But back to you leave the service 2015. You put out 70 resumes. You get maybe 2.5 interviews.
Nothing. So I qualified for a vocational rehabilitation program. So I actually went back to school and did a 4-year degree in software. But I already had my master's and everything, so I didn't think I was going to get to qualify.
Master's in what? What'd you have?
Business. It's an MBA. I've got an MBA. Oh, cool. And so I had that already, so I didn't think I would get accepted into the program, but they said, no, you do. So I did a degree in software. And then as soon as I was done the degree, I immediately, within 2 weeks, was in a class teaching, which is kind of where I wanted to go anyway. Like I really, in the military, a lot of people don't understand about the military is that every military in the world is one massive post-secondary institution. If you're not on a course, then you're teaching on a course. If you're not taking your career course or teaching on it, then you're training in the field, confirming what you did on courses. It's one big, massive post-secondary thing. You're always training. You're always on courses. It never, ever, ever ends, right? When I did staff college, that was 6 months on its own. You're basically on course full-time. That's your career. I mean, even for these guys to become a colonel, it's 10 months. To be a junior general, that's another 10 months to 12 months. Like you're always in school. Warfare is it's a massive, massive education. So anyway, for me, I wanted to get back into the classroom and be an instructor because I had a lot of experience teaching and I like software. But the big thing for me was at my age, I really didn't want to I didn't want to end up getting a job in software working for somebody who was about 25 years old. Who was one of these whiz kids that, just didn't have a lot of life experience. And I got kind of set in my ways and I thought, I want to teach. I really want to go back into the classroom. And, I enjoyed it. I loved it. I taught for 2 years. I was part-time pay, full-time hours. But I loved it. Honestly,
that's how they
really
get you. That's how they get you.
Oh, I know.
Like,
I know.
You
I
want to
know.
come do this?
Yeah.
You can do it, but we only have this much money. But you're gonna have to work full time, Tom. It's going to.
Yeah, I know. Well, and so when I found out about the first pandemic, or when the first lockdown, I actually came out of a meeting with a bunch of my students that we started a club to build the software, write the software for a self-driving car. And I came out of the very first meeting, and bang, I find out about the first lockdown. And that basically shut the whole thing down. And then we switched to online learning. And then within, a couple of semesters after that, all of a sudden I'm unemployed, right? Because I said, there's no way in hell, you as an employer are ever going to tell me what medical procedures I'm going to have to take as a condition of employment. Like that's never going to happen.
Now we're getting into it, Tom. I like this.
Yeah.
So that's where it started for you. Is you're happily teaching at school, and they're like, "Hey, if you want to stay, you got to get vaccinated."
Yeah.
And you're like, "Pound sand, I'm out of here." And where did it go from there for you? Because you became obviously the face of one of the several faces of the Convoy, and we'll get to some of that in just a second. But where did it go from I'm trying to establish a bit of a history here, a very, very proud public service of this country for 25 years. Mm-hmm. You and I have had a very good conversation prior to getting onto this, and we're having a decent conversation now about something that has nothing to do with this. So as we get into the subject, you and I have agreed that we're both not doctors. We don't have fucking degrees on our walls, so we're not going to talk about the reality that's out there, but your experience. So that's what I want to get down to, right? Which is, you're at school. They're like, get vaccinated or get out. You're like, peace. And how did that start the ball rolling to, the person that sits here today?
So I actually did get fired. I did get fired because I didn't even get to the point where I could say to the school, "Hey, I'm not telling you my medical stuff. I'm not doing that." What I actually did is I sent an email to the president of the college and a bunch of deans and a whole bunch of faculty saying, I can't comprehend how you're getting around all these different areas of Canadian law. And so anyway, within 3 or 4 days, I got fired. I mean, I think I'm coming up on the 1-year anniversary of getting fired.
Congrats.
Yeah. And so off I went getting fired, and it didn't bother me one bit. And I did appeal it. So yeah, Frank Peterson, I might as well give you a shout out because I'm pretty sure you hate the the chair even that
Oh,
I'm
the
sitting in.
comments,
That's
dude. I'm sorry. I don't even.
I don't mind.
We got a super active comment section, and I think people are really jacked up about today. We've got hundreds of people watching. People. Obviously, you're an enigma. Not many people have talked to you. You've held a pretty close circles over the past little bit. So you agreeing to do this is of great interest to people. It's of great interest to me.
Yeah.
But Frank said you didn't show up to your court date. Let me just put this up. Didn't show up to your court date with your employer and lost because of that was and so lost your job. Semantics. I don't even care about that.
I wanted to, but I was running in the Ontario election at the time, and I had a debate that day that sprung up last minute. And I told him, I said, I want an adjournment because you guys gave yourselves, a postponement. You guys postponed it 2 other times. Why don't I get to have one when I need one? Because I'm in a debate that I just found out about a couple days ago. And they said, yeah, too bad, so sad. So I said, well, you're the lawyer. This is like first year law school stuff. It should be easy enough to defeat. I lost. I don't care. Honestly, I don't care. All right. But going forward, sure.
Yeah. So again, details don't, to me, those details are inconsequential. We're talking about, Tom Marazzo, this person that took a stand, decided he didn't want to get vaccinated. And again, I'm diametrically opposed to that, but this is your story. This has got nothing to do with me. So you decide you're gone. You have a meeting of the minds. You're gone. It doesn't matter why. And so you leave the university, and then what happens?
So sell the house at the top of the market because he didn't know if it was going to crash or what the deal was. Sold
Is this
it
in Ottawa? You're in Ottawa at the time?
No, we were just outside of Barrie.
Okay. You're from around here. Okay.
Yeah, I was lived in a place called Utopia, and it was. And I had we lived in an unbelievable piece of property.
Yeah.
Sold it and bought a big chunk of land out more in the eastern area. And I'm not telling anyone because I think Frank is going to look me up. So I'm not telling Frank because
we're trying to tell guys like Frank to chill out today. We're just trying to get some backstory. That's all.
Yeah. So bought a really phenomenal piece of, like I looked for months and months for another piece of land. And the plan was, we bought the land. I cashed in January. I cashed an RSP to, I had my pension, my Army pension plus the RSP. And I thought that's what I'm going to do for the year is I'm just going to basically live off of that RSP, my pension, and then, build a house on this land and not have any mortgage. I've got enough land to grow food, do whatever I want to do, not really have to be too deeply into this system anymore. And anyway, I hear about these truckers, right? And now I had obviously very strong feelings about what the government was doing, but when I got contacted through a couple of mutual friends, they said, hey, you're this is right up your alley for military stuff. Would you mind getting involved to help out with some logistics? And the convoy had already arrived in Ottawa, so they got there on a Friday. I didn't get there till Sunday. I had on a Sunday. So I think the 27th of January. Like I had nothing to do with it.
This has been going on and you weren't there when the whole thing started. Is that correct?
I had nothing to do with the convoy other than I gave $100 to GoFundMe in the original days. And I was a huge supporter. And I a lot of people that I knew were totally supporting the convoy. And so I was like, great. I was going to go out on an overpass one night. And I called a friend of mine and I said, hey, you want to go? And he says, well, actually, they're going to come and stay here for a while for the night, rest up, and then make the final trip to Ottawa. So I said, all right, do you need any help? I helped out for the night. And then the trucks never actually made it to my friends because there was an accident on the highway and they got rerouted around the exit to get to his place. So I never even met anybody with the convoy, but somebody I knew was attached to people within the convoy, and they called me on. They called me Sunday morning and said, "Hey, can you take a phone call with these guys that are organizing it?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." I thought I would just give them a little bit of advice on a sustainment plan, talk logistics, any like simple stuff for any Army officer.
Because you were painted. So sorry, just to recap. I mean, and again, the benefit of a conversation, right? Instead of shit posting each other, you were painted as one of the masterminds of this bad boy. You were painted as like No, Tom Marazzo's got 25 years of military experience. I know that was what we were repeating. He's in on the ground floor. He's like secretly helping these guys figure out a way to use psyops from like this military component. You know, he's one of the organizers. Is any of that accurate, or was this like, hey, you got a call on a Saturday or Sunday, you just showed up and they inserted you into the program? Like, what's more the narrative that you go with?
Let's say a bit of both, because I was not an original organizer. I mean, that was Tamara, Chris, and Bridget. Bridget's the one who came up with the original idea for
Bridget
it.
Beltman?
She worked with Chris. Chris and Tamara went to work on doing all the fundraising, and that's how, you know, it started from them. And then, you know, they started traveling across the country, and that's when the big that's when it became very well known. It was on its way there. Frank, it is James Botter. James called me. I never met James before in my life. You know,
he's interesting, isn't he?
Yeah. James, you know, James.
Hey, look at us. We're finding common ground again.
Yeah. James is an interesting guy. There's no doubt about it. But I honestly, he called me. I didn't know who James was. I didn't know who Canada Unity was. It took me like 2 weeks to figure out who Canada Unity was when I got there. So anyway, there was a lot of groups there. There's a lot of groups there, and I had no idea who any of them were, because I didn't care. I really didn't care who the groups were there. I was there for Team Canada. That's all I gave a crap about.
Did you feel used a little bit? I'm getting this, like, you know, they hear about this guy, Tom Marazzo. He's got a wealth of military experience. He understands psyops and logistics better than most. He worked for the government, all this shit. And you get a call late to the party and they bring you in, all of a sudden, boom. Did they just shove you to the front of the line in the stump to go, hey, Tom, you're speaking for us because you're the best spoken guy? And no offense to Tamara, Chris, and everybody else that was there. I've heard them speak. You're a much better speaker than those cats.
Thanks. What do you think, Frank? I hope Frank agrees. Okay. So no, to be honest, I had this saying. I said to people when I got there for the first week, because it was a full week before I had gone anywhere near a camera, and I would tell people, look, if the history book gets written about this thing, and I'm not in the history book, that's a win for me. Like, I'm here for my kids, man. I'm not here for any other reason. But a week into it, exactly a week to the day, they raided one of our areas at the baseball diamond, a place called Coventry. The police went in and raided it, and it was like, why would you do that? Like, it literally had no effect on our ability to conduct operations, to sustain ourselves. So that night, Laura Lynn Thompson was there, and she just happened I bumped into her in the parking lot. She knew who I was somehow, and basically I did a real quick interview right there in the parking lot, and then I went back into the headquarters, and they said, you know, why don't you we're all going to do a live stream, and we're going to talk about this, and Tom, you're going to talk about how this has no impact. So I said, all right, fine, whatever. I didn't really care. I didn't plan it. But this is a full week after I had arrived, and that's the first time I had ever done any media stuff. And then I didn't really know it at the time, but it did seem like maybe that was my on-camera interview, because I think the next day or the day after that, I started doing more. And then the media plan changed, and I didn't do anything for about a week. And then, you know, my role there was evolving, but I didn't care about the camera stuff. I only spoke when I was asked to speak. I never volunteered except for the last day. The last day we were there, when I announced that we were going to peacefully withdraw, that day I did. That was, you know, I said I would do it, but I didn't make the decision myself. There was a whole group of us that had a big meeting. That was the second day after the police had gone in and raided. So half the people were either arrested, were basically gone, like trying to protect their own. You know, these trucks are
at that time. Chris Barber had been arrested.
He'd been arrested. Yeah. Danny had been arrested by that time, and there wasn't a lot of publicly known faces. Like, I'm pretty sure even Pat King was arrested by that time, I think. So there wasn't anyone.
He's a lot of fun in one of those logistic meetings.
Yeah.
Because that's a whole other story here, right? And I want to get to parts of that. Is it, you know, I again, you and I talked before this, and let me just say this out loud. I hate all protests equally. You're also, which shockingly, you said this to me. You're like, I don't like protests either. I'm like, come on.
I don't like, I don't. And you know, this is going to enrage a lot of people, I'm sure, on my side of the aisle. But the truth is, I've never, you know, I study history, and you know, I have not seen a lot of evidence in my entire life where big giant protests have accomplished what they originally wanted to, with the exception, like we said, is maybe the civil rights movement in the US. But the Kent State massacre was a big thing. But I mean, that was a big deal because of the killing that happened at Kent State. And
you know, from the bell tower, if anybody knows that story, it's fucking insane. It's like the insanity that we see every day on a daily basis in the States. But it's like back then that shit didn't happen, right? Yeah.
So you know, we had seen people protesting for a couple of years against the government in Ontario. They're going to Toronto. We had worldwide rallies, all this stuff. And I'm like, you know, this is kind of, it was the first time that maybe I got interested in going to one of these, but I have an immune compromised son. So I did not want to go into the big crowds, right? Because COVID itself, like, I'm never going to deny that in the early days of COVID, you know, as a combat engineer officer, as a soldier, every soldier every year requalifies on something called CBRN, and it's chemical, biological, nuclear warfare. So you've got to put on all your PPE, you got to do all your stuff. You know, you've got to train to live in an environment that is chemically contaminated, right? I've spent days on end wearing, you know, chemical warfare suits, respirators, trying to live your life. You know, yeah, it's nice to meet you too, Paul. That's okay. Anyway, so when you look at all this,
Paul Atkinson, that's Blue Jacket guy from the thing. He called you a fucking idiot. And put your kids at risk.
Yeah, Paul. You know, that's fine. Just, I don't care, Paul. I'm gonna sleep just great tonight, knowing that you're out in the world. It doesn't bother me. Like, it doesn't bother me. But anyway, and I know why Paul's upset at me. Yeah. But
we'll get to it.
Yeah, but the reality is, like, I was not going to take chances. So my son, you know, lives in a different place than I do. And, you know, I didn't see him for the first 3 months of COVID almost, because I knew that, you know, there was too many known unknowns, and I didn't want to take any chances. Right. And so finally I did see him. I didn't go see him. I sat in the rain all day on his front porch under an umbrella, a blanket, froze my ass off. And, you know, it was worth it for me. I've never missed one of his birthdays. Never once have I missed a birthday, which is kind of a miracle in itself, given my old career. But for me, I was like, okay, until I know more about this, I'm not going to take any chances with people, right? I'm just not going to do it. I will admit, in the early days, I wore the mask. I didn't go out that much, but I wore the mask because I was just not going to take chances.
You talk about it like you don't want your friends to make fun of you because of it.
No, and well, you know what? There'd be no excuse for me to wear it now, but I did in the early days. And I'll tell you why. In the military, we have a thing, we call it the gray man. The gray man is like, you blend in, you don't get noticed. Mm-hmm. So until I could do a proper, you know, situational awareness or an assessment of my surroundings, I wasn't going to make myself known to anybody. Right. And
so can I ask you a couple questions?
Sure.
Yeah, let me ask you a couple questions. So you got an immunocompromised son. And you're not married anymore, obviously. No, happily divorced like myself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, again, actually, my son's mother and I, she's actually one of my best friends. We just couldn't be a couple. She's a phenomenal mother, great lady.
Is she vaccinated?
Absolutely not.
She's not vaccinated, so she has the same belief system, the same basic structure of what's going on in her head as you do.
Yes.
Okay, good. And again, that's how we're phrasing and framing all this: is that you have a belief system, I have a belief system, and they're representative of some of the chasms that we're experiencing, and the shit posting, and the treating human beings like shit, which is what we're trying to overcome a little bit and show that people can have a conversation. So, because you and I have a history of shit posting each other, by the way.
I know.
And we've dealt with that, and it's something that I think we all need to move on, and we both share again, and that's a really big fucking common ground to share with another individual who you've spent a year from afar going, fucking guy, that fucking guy just won't stop. The fucking guy. You said that about me. I've said that about you. And listen, it's systemic. But back to your family. So you got a family. You got a son who's immunocompromised. Does this mean, and you're not getting vaccinated, but you as an officer did get vaccinated. It was part of the deal when you enlisted, right? Like you had to have a whole flight of your vaccines. Did you have any issues with those? And did you take mefloquine? And are you part of that mefloquine lawsuit if you did?
No, I'm not. So for your viewers, some of you are going to love this one, but in my 25 years, I missed out on 11 deployments overseas. I'm one of the rare, like, albino type of engineers, former infantry that didn't actually deploy. I tried a bunch of times. So I'll answer your other question. In 2008, I was supposed to go on Task Force 308, and I was going to go over train the Afghan army. And I got my MMR polio vaccine. And I literally within minutes lost my peripheral vision for an hour. And I was like freaking out because I didn't know how I was supposed to get home. I had a really bad reaction to this. It subsided, I was fine. I'm obviously still here. But the next day I go into work and my boss told me, you're not going. You're not going because, one of my son was actually in the future someday supposed to have a big surgery. So I couldn't, the military said, we don't care what you want. You're going to become an administrative burden if you deploy because you're going to be worried about your kid and blah, blah, blah. So you're not going. Okay. I fought back. I lost. I didn't get to go. That's just the way it is. Like, that's just how it, I almost went to Somalia. That's how far back I went, right? Like I joined the army in 1990. So I almost went to Somalia and then that didn't happen. And that would have been mefloquine if I would have gone to Somalia. And thank God I didn't.
Somalia, Afghanistan, right? Like, we've had John Dow on several times. As part of that mefloquine suit. He's wonderful. We've talked about Jeremy McKenzie, and I know you put something out about him this morning on Substack talking about suicide. But I've got a real soft spot for veterans. And I think that's for whatever reason, my family fought in World War II. They beat back the Nazi machine in England, literally were there and overseas. And so, I'm a huge, huge fan of giving people the opportunity that have served this country, giving people the leeway to have conversations, talk about it, and really kind of talk about what went into that. Because this government of ours, and this may come as a shock, I am not a Trudeau fan. And I'm also not a fan of the 20, 30, 40 years of governments that I've experienced and the way that they've treated our veterans, force them to act a certain way, force them into this medical bullshit, force them to fuck off when they ask for help, right? So from that perspective, and I don't think it's a Trudeau thing, I think it's the way that we've treated our men and women in uniform for fucking decades, Tom. Decades. Yeah,
I agreed. Like the year I joined the regular force, we had Maclean's did a big story on the deplorable conditions and the pay that the military was going at. Like guys had to go get part-time jobs to serve in the military because they couldn't afford to feed their families on bases, right? And it took for Maclean's to break a big article in 1999, and finally they said, "Oh, gee, maybe we should pay our people that are risking their lives everywhere," because we were in neck deep into Bosnia. In all these other crappy places around the world. And it's like, well, you want people to serve, but when they do serve and then they come home and they have moral injuries, they have physical injuries, they have PTSD, where are you? You're not there. And I mean, when Justin Trudeau came out and told that veteran, the veterans are asking more than we're willing to give. Well, I'm sorry, but you know what? This is something that the public needs to understand. When you join your military in Canada, you sign a contract, it's called unlimited liability. It means that under certain circumstances, such as war, you could be ordered to forfeit your life, right? So when Justin Trudeau comes out and he says, you're asking more than we're willing to give, it's like, I signed a contract with you, you piece of garbage, saying that I'm willing to forfeit my entire life to serve this country in a war. You just have to, you hope that you have faith in the country, in the government, that they're going to send you to a war that's justified.
Yeah.
Right. So, when he came out and said that against veterans, I'm pretty sure he lost probably the vast majority of the support of every soldier in the military, except for the senior officers that are, ass kissing for a promotion.
Yeah, so
right?
so let me jump off there real quick because
Yeah.
I've gotten a lot of information from you about
Yeah.
your history in the Army, being passed over, the eye
Yeah.
exams, all that
Yeah.
stuff. We're talking about this lifetime liability thing, which basically says,
Yeah.
hey, we can treat you like a fucking guinea pig.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm intensely familiar because of my relationship with John Dow and the Mefloquine
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah.
Army Chris, who has a podcast with us called Fire for Effect, which is all about veterans, all about
Yeah.
PTSD, all about getting
Yeah.
better, all about resources. So we take this very seriously, just so you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when it comes to that, you saying you're going to give your life for your country, why did it stop with vaccines after, specifically this time?
Yeah, a couple of reasons. So anthrax was a vaccine that they tried to push onto soldiers, and a guy, an Air Force Sergeant Kipling, pushed back and said, "No, you've skipped clinical trials, and so you're not going to do it." And of course, this anthrax vaccine was linked to a whole bunch of illnesses, Epstein-Barr, a whole bunch of illnesses. So people are like, "No, I'm not doing that." They actually court-martialed the guy. Like he retired, honorably discharged or retired from the military, and they brought him back as a civilian to court-martial him because he refused to take the anthrax vax. Then you get to Mefloquine, right? Mefloquine was another one, and that there was an ongoing lawsuit.
And did you know what was going on with Mefloquine too?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you knew about the psychosis and the fucking health issues and all the other
everybody,
shit that comes
yes, yeah, everybody serving.
and
in
it's
the
a real
military.
thing, just so everybody knows.
Thing.
Like, listen, I'm bullish on vaccines. I'm vaxxed to the tits. I love them.
Yeah.
I'm fucking happy to wear a mask. I have no problem with it. But this issue of Mefloquine and some of the subsidiary issues that are behind, filling some of our men and women in uniform with things that they're not sure. Has, and I'm getting that feeling of extreme distrust that has fed into your belief system, correct?
And because when you know that they forced people to take the Mefloquine under threat of court-martial and stuff like that, it's like, well, wait a minute, when you do unlimited liability, it's not in every single situation. It's in war, right? And until you're leading up to war, like I'm up to date as of 2014, 15 when I left. I'm up to date on the
COVID vaccine comes in a gummy and it tastes real good. Will you eat
it? not gonna do. Hey, no, I don't think so. I think it would. Yeah. It's just never going to happen. But
okay, I'm just asking about you. That's it. I'm not asking about anything else. Go ahead. I just was.
But we knew though, like everybody knew that Mefloquine was an experiment. Like, and the soldiers weren't told initially that they were under an experiment. Like the soldiers themselves were the experiment, and that is a violation of the Nuremberg Code. And everybody knew. It's like, wait a minute, you're not allowed. There are certain things with the military you're not allowed to do. One, you're not allowed in most Western militaries. You're not allowed to conduct experiments on your military.
Okay,
you're not allowed to do it.
Okay, so let's deal with Nuremberg real quick, and let's try to not talk about Nuremberg again.
Sure, we can bypass it. We can bypass it.
Because Nuremberg was literally about human experiences, experiments conducted on prisoners of war, right? And so that was the goal. It was you're never going to test people and prisoners of war in these situations and treat them to this. So I that is my understanding. You've got your understanding. Let's not muddy the water with Nuremberg because I don't think anybody's going to be hanging me anytime soon. So that's my opinion. But anyway, go ahead.
That's fair enough. But then when we get to what is the government's authority? How did they skip the clinical trials for COVID, right? So this was a big thing for me. And, they've got this history of just bypassing clinical trials and doing stuff to their soldiers. And then, Romeo Dallaire himself has just recently joined on the lawsuit as well, because he was told as a general that if he didn't take the Mefloquine, he was going to be court-martialed. Yeah. Right. So, this is coercion, and just because you have unlimited liability, it can't be used in every single case. Like I can't be told by my boss, "Hey, go play in traffic because you pissed me off today." It doesn't extend to that level of ridiculousness. At some point, logic has to prevail. And one of the 10 principles of leadership is know your soldiers and promote their welfare. Lead by example. There's a lot of things here, but the military, and here's an interesting thing. We know right now that half of the medical officers in the Canadian military right now have refused to disclose or to attest to their vaccine status. And yet none of the medical doctors in the military are being held to account for that. We also know that 100% of all lieutenant colonels and above that applied for religious exemptions on the vaccine were given their exemptions. But yet they've kicked out 1,000.
Just so you know, I believe in no religious exemptions for fucking anything on this planet. I'm hardline against religion, and I'm hardline against people that use religion to avoid their civic responsibility. So I just wanted to put that out there to let you continue.
Fair enough. And me personally,
you religious?
I'm not religious. I'm going to go so far as if anyone's ever read a book called Conversations with God, it's Neil Donald Walsh. This is how I reconcile God, the matrix, collective consciousness, philosophy, the universe, all into one thing. That works very, very well for me because I've struggled all my life with the idea of religion versus the idea of God. Yeah. So, I mean, philosophy, God, whatever you want to call it. That book, Conversations with God, it got me through some really, really dark times in my life. I'm perfectly happy with that.
What is that belief system that you have then? Like, apart from the book that you read, because one of the things that I've noticed, and we'll get to some of the people that were involved in the convoy, and we'll get to some of the fallout in just a second too. But one of the things I really noticed, and I'm sure you did too, the amount of crosses and the amount of people that think Jesus is a vaccine. Now, the amount of people who sat there and prayed, the amount of people who really, like, there was, you've heard the term and seen the term. You might take offense to the term Christo-fascist. I believe there was a massive, a portion of that movement that is Christo-fascist, that believes in theocracy, that says, hey, you know what? We're here because God's going to deliver us and the end times are coming and we need to be his people. We're the chosen one. That is a massive thread that ran through this group of people, and it collected different cross sections of individuals, right? As it moved across. It was people that had vested interest, whether it, they hated, everybody hated Trudeau, but it was like, it was the fuck Trudeau train, but inside that Trudeau train, you had a boxcar full of people who may or may not really appreciate Nazi imagery. You had a boxcar of people that just really hated Trudeau. You had a boxcar of people that loved conservative politics. You had a boxcar of people that didn't want to get vaccinated. Then you had a boxcar of people who just hated the economy and believed in this weird freedom that no one can seem to express. In your sentiment, that freedom to not get vaccinated after being put through the ringer in the military for 25 years, getting jabbed with a bunch of stuff, and then saying, fuck you signed up for this, go out there. That's a little different in my mind because it leads itself to this place that you're at, right? It formulated this opinion of this, and I'm getting a better picture of Tom Marazzo as a result of a guy who's like, nah, you know what? I've been fucked over like 100 times by you guys. Why would this be any different from that perspective? However, how did, and you look at it the way that you look at it, but like there were a lot of competing groups of assholes that delivered 3 to 4 weeks of PTSD to close to 1 million people in Ottawa that week, right?
All right, we're getting into the overlap of we're starting to push away, but okay. So to answer your question, we were surrounded by many different religious faiths, not just Christians. We had Muslims there. I saw Asian people there. I saw every mixed bag of religious backgrounds, creeds, colors, ethnicities, whatever you want to say.
But weren't the majority were like,
I would say the majority that I dealt with on a daily basis, the majority just happened to be Christian. But you go out, I mean, we had people from India there, we had people from Asia, we had everybody. We had a lot of Eastern Europeans there. That's one thing that never gets reported. That the number of Eastern Europeans that were there was excellent. I loved it because you talk with them and they give you their perspective on what it was like when they came from their Eastern European countries, came to Canada. So for me, it wasn't a religious, it wasn't driven by a religion. It was people that were driven by current events that were happening, but for them to get through, to find their inner strength to do what they were doing every day, they got through it with their various faith.
Yeah.
So for me, I was
imagine how much I love this movement. I hate protests and I hate organized religion. I'm not a religious person. I'll put that out there. I'm not a religious person. I'm very happy to hear that, Tom.
Yeah, but I'm absolutely, if you read Conversations with God and some of the other sort of philosophy around that, or whatever you think, like that reconciles the world for me, in the universe. So now let me say this one thing. The one thing about religion that I've always really had an envy of, it's not a jealousy, it's an envy, is that people have their darkest moments in their entire lives. They always had that guiding them, always there sort of comforting them, like a friend or a hug that they needed in a time of need. As a non-religious person, never really had that. So I just had to rely on logic. Mm-hmm. So I'm envious of that. They got that spiritual need that they needed in their times. Even Conversations with God was the first time I ever experienced something like that. Right. So so when we're in Ottawa, I would say predominantly it was Christians. Mm-hmm. And it was their faith that pushed them through day after day after day.
But was it, and wasn't their faith in a lot of situations? And keep in mind, I've had hundreds of these conversations, whether they've been personal or online. But their faith was a real trigger for them, because the basis of their faith told them that they shouldn't get vaccinated. That biblically speaking, that is not something you should put in your body, whether it be the mark of the beast. This is what I'm trying to reconcile. I mean, I heard a lot of that. I'm sure you saw a lot of that. Was that part of it? When you look at that part of it, do you go, okay, my reasoning for not, and that's why it's like this boxcar effect of a bunch of different people that just wanted the same thing, which was to not get vaccinated or be able to, because they hated mandates or they didn't want to wear vaccines. And where the jump off point is for me is when people started calling it tyrannical, right? Or calling it a dictatorship and stuff like that, because this was like an international health emergency. It was a crisis, and we don't know. Like, in my opinion is, and I'll share it with you. My opinion of the whole thing is based on the philosophy of Stoicism, and the philosophy of Stoicism, teachings of Marcus Aurelius, where he says the real fruit of this life is being of good character and acts for the greater good, or the common good, acts for people. And when I look at, what happened, what you say that you were involved in, to whatever extent that you say, which is your story. But when I look at what happened, I don't see any of that. I didn't see a lot of good character. We had embedded reporters there. I saw you standing up going, why won't anybody talk to us? And that gave me pause for thought. And then I looked at the people that were behind you, with jerry cans. And this is just me telling you that this is my opinion. It's not definitive. I look, because of my life philosophy, and I look behind you and all the people that came with you guys. I sat and thought to myself, none of that is good for anybody, because at the end of the day, and this is my estimation, at the end of the day, you guys are going to suffer legally. The people that were there, you're going to suffer emotionally, you're going to suffer materially. And during that month of all that going on, say what you will, I was not there, but we have several content providers that actually work and live in Ottawa, that live in the Byward Market area, Lower Town, in and around where that whole thing happened, right on Parliament, that had to move out of town, that are in therapy, that have PTSD, that are still so angry that, the freedom of going to work was taken away from them. The freedom of being able to have a good night's rest for a few weeks or a couple of weeks, however long it landed, that it was taken away from them. And that's, to me, it's the same thing. And so I go back to you saying you don't like protests, and then this protest, and it's like the most legendary occupation / protest in Canadian history, that shut down borders, that really damaged the common good, in my estimation. Again, this is from my belief system. It's from my median, right? Is that there wasn't a lot of character, and there wasn't any greater good that was being serviced, other than the greater good of, 8,000 to 10,000 people who just didn't want to get vaccinated. And that's as plainly as I can put it. For their religious reasons for their own reasons, like you have. Everybody had different reasons, right? And so it's easy for me to go, they're a bunch of fucking terrorists and fascists, fuck those guys, and then start that conversation. I think that's probably where you heard my name first, was when all that stuff was going on, because we were really bullish on, how is this contributing to the greater good? Where is this good character? Who are these people helping, other than those, that small group of individuals that came downtown and put on a big show, right? So how would you talk to any of those people today? Like if I brought Marianne Iverson on, who had to move town, she's in counseling now because of this, or Blue Jacket guy Paul, who took a strip off you, and you said, hey, I'll get to that in a minute. What do you say to those people? Because in a fair-minded conversation, after everything that we've discussed today, you're anti-protest. You've said to each their own, you can do what you want, but for 3-4 weeks, that was not the case, Tom, right?
Yeah. So there's a lot there. I'll try to.
Yeah, it's a long question.
Yeah, it's a long question. It's a long question. But let me say, when I talk about protests, up until this convoy, I never really saw a lot of long-term sustainable value. And when you look at what was happening in Toronto, even before the whole Ottawa convoy for the previous 2 years, they weren't getting a lot of ground. Like the politicians literally just closed their curtains, went around about their day, didn't talk to anyone, didn't care, just continued on with, doing stuff that, people on our side of the conversation really objected to without any dialogue. They just imposed their will on the people and refused to talk to people that were protesting. So from that point of view, I was very conflicted, because part of me wanted to go to the protest in Toronto, but to sort of protect my son, I thought, no, I'm not going to do it just until I know for sure what the medical implications are going to be for him. But I'll support it in any way other than that I can. So when we get fast forward to Ottawa, I knew that all I knew is this: for 2.5 years, when you're a soldier, you're a military officer, it's easy to learn. Let's say the Taliban, or you're going against some adversary. You know who they are. You know what their TTPs are, their training tactics, procedures. You know their capabilities. You know their strengths. You can devise a strategy around that. But with COVID, it was incredibly difficult to determine who the true adversary was for this. But when that convoy came, because I didn't like from day one, I thought what the government had done with these lockdowns and with these mandates was stunningly ridiculous, irresponsible, didn't make any medical or economic sense. In a pandemic, absolutely in a pandemic, because I researched. You didn't think
lockdowns and mandates work?
They were never. Even the WHO said they were a bad idea.
The WHO has taken it on the chin in the last couple of weeks.
And so here's the other thing: most people in Ontario don't even know what Emergency Management Ontario is. They don't have no idea what that is or what their mandate is. And so when I was posted to the divisional headquarters in Toronto years ago, in the morning briefs with the Army commander for Ontario, we would get these morning briefs. I sat beside the guy from Emergency Management Ontario, the liaison officer. That guy was a retired brigadier general himself. And the thing is, EMO was the ones that should have been put in charge of this pandemic response plan, not some bureaucratic chief medical officer that had no background, no training. Wow, you're an administrative bureaucratic doctor, but you're not an emergency response person. EMO, that is their mandate. That's what they exist for. They are the hub in the middle of a wheel. Doctors, police, banks, education, all of our long-term care facilities, all these institutions, churches, they're all spokes in the wheel. And what should have happened is that the premier of every province should have engaged their emergency management offices, said, okay, you're now in charge of this response plan on behalf of the province, and you will give the elected officials, which is every premier that was elected to make the decisions, you'll give them 12, 24-hour daily updates, give them information briefs, then decision briefs. They will make the decisions based off the collated information. But that's not what happened. Doug Ford and all the rest of these donkeys just decided that, you know what, I'm just going to put a doctor. Doug Ford too? Oh, he's incompetent.
A fucking jack off, eh?
Yeah, he's incompetent. He's just incompetent. I mean, I saw comments about cheesecake, and I hope they were talking about him. But
Yeah,
here's
they were.
the thing.
They hate it. Dude,
Yeah.
again, common ground, Tom. We're fine.
Yeah, there we
like
go.
I'm disagreeing with
Yeah.
70 to 80% of the things that you're saying, but it's common. You're explaining your position, which is fine. But common ground is you hate Doug Ford as much as we do. Both sides hate him. And here's the other great part. I think we both hate mainstream media just as much as well.
I do, because they are responsible for a lot of the problems in the division in this country. They lie.
Oh yeah,
they literally lie. Like I am breathing my breath is how badly they lie. It's that easy for them.
What do they lie about in your estimation?
Well,
and then I want to get back to the question you didn't answer, which is like, what do you say to? Well, let's do that first.
Yeah,
let's do because we haven't answered that question. What do you say to people who are in counseling today because they have PTSD from air horns going for 3 weeks and they think that they're all the shit that happened because that was an occupation, wasn't a protest. You were and I think people want to hear that part. Like, what is it that you would say to these people who are really suffering to this day because of what it is that you guys decided to do? And then the last part of that question, what would you say to them? And whose idea was it to blare the horns?
The horns were honking by the time I arrived, and they were there for probably 3 days after I got there. So, and then there was an injunction. Justice McLean declared that the horns had to stop.
Yeah.
I was in meetings with the Ottawa police. They were trying to negotiate us down to 1 hour a day. And, I looked at it as a bargaining chip, to be honest, with them to get other concessions, like getting them to allow us to clean out the porta potties that we rented so that, we could.
Porta potties were full, huh?
They were getting full. And you know what? The Ottawa police never allowed us to get them to go clean them. Right. So we were making alternate.
That makes me laugh. I don't know why. It makes me laugh.
I mean, they didn't. I mean, they did everything in their power to not let us get those porta potties cleaned. Right. Yeah. We rented them.
What do you say? But what do you say? What do you say to Paul? If Paul's in front of you, I'm Paul.
Okay.
And I'm like, dude, I'm in counseling today because I didn't sleep for 3 weeks.
Well, then I'm gonna. If you're Paul or whoever Paul is, I'm gonna say, you know what, Paul? Paul, I just don't believe you. I literally don't believe you, because after that horn injunction was put in place, I would say 95% of the time we abided by it. Now, we couldn't control every single trucker. I mean, these are owner operators of trucks that come in. They came in, they're in charge of themselves. Like, that's the reality, right? So we did everything in our power to police it. And in fact, there was a guy who refused to comply with everything. We had them surrounded. There was a bunch of truckers that decided, you know what? If you don't stop the horn, we're actually going to disconnect your horn from your truck. This was truckers policing other truckers because of the injunction. We agreed. We had a legal injunction, so we abided by it. It was ruled. But that same judge, Justice McLean, also ruled that we had a legal right to be there. And that was the thing. And that never changed. We had a legal right from an actual judge, an Ontario Superior Court judge. Justice McLean said, yeah, you got a legal right to be there, but stop the horns. So we said, okay, we'll stop the horns, right? We worked with the cops every single day. I must have had 10 meetings a day, either on phone, text, or in person with the police and various members as well.
Quick question about the cops. How many, let's say you talked to 10 a day, how many were sympathetic to the convoy, do you think?
I stuck to the regular ones. No, there was lots, because like the police, 10? The Ottawa police, 5 out of 10, and the protective
10 out of 10, 8 out of 10.
I wish I could give you a number. Honestly, I can't give you a number on that. A lot of them, but like that was a lot of the feedback we got, is that actually the police were really pretty decent on the street right up until, let's say, the last 4 or 5 days, when things just started to change in their demeanor, because they got their marching orders. They knew they were going to come in and start going after people, especially when they invoked the Emergency Act, and then all the good ones even. But what a lot of people don't know is a lot of the Ottawa police and other police jurisdictions that showed up refused to go to Ottawa. They said, I'm not going to Ottawa. I'm not going against those people. And you know, if you try to send me downtown, I'm going on vacation. I'm not doing what you're asking me to do, or I'm taking a sick leave, or whatever it is. So this is the thing. There was another story that came out too last week, Tom. I don't know if you read it, of RCMP officers that were trying to assess, the issue and assess how to fix the issue at the convoy. They wouldn't share information readily with certain RCMP officers who were incredibly sympathetic to the movement, right? Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, we knew that there was people, but we weren't actively trying to compromise those people. I mean, they had their job to do, and I mean, we had people on our that were retired military, retired police. It's not like we were trying to compromise. I mean, I remember being in a specific meeting saying, "We're not going to compromise the integrity of the police. They still have to go back to work and face their peers. We're not going to get them to turn on their brotherhood, right? We're not that's not what we're about." But the reality is we literally we and I don't care what the mainstream media lies about, but I can tell you for a fact, we fed homeless people, we did first aid, we cleaned the streets, we did garbage collection. I can guarantee with absolute certainty that we put safety lanes in place on every single road. Every single road. We always made sure emergency services could get there. And we told the cops daily, look, we're about being safe. We're about being responsible. We actually, some of our truckers did first aid on somebody who OD'd, and we were there and administered first aid, got them there. A lady fell, slipped on the ice. We actually got her to the ambulance. We stabilized her until the ambulance could come and get her. We were doing a lot of stuff in that city that the mainstream media lies about. And it's just not like this whole idea about we were trying to burn down a building was the most absurd lie ever told by the media, probably, because they already retracted it. The Ottawa police came out and said, yeah, actually that never happened. It had nothing to do with the convoy. It was an isolated incident with one crazy guy.
Yeah.
Right. It had nothing to do with
environment. Yeah, and there's competing reports. They said the people that tried to light the building on fire were not associated with Convoy. They were taking advantage of the opportunity, right?
Yeah. So
and had that opportunity not been there, might not have tried to burn the building down. But that's another story, and I don't want to get into the weeds.
Yeah. No, the other thing is this. I mean, every year there's Canada Day. I mean, the really intense times during the convoy was the weekends. That's when everybody was not at work and they would come in, support the convoy. But here's the thing, right? And I know for your perception, it's 10, 12,000 people. But how is it that 10 or 12,000 who arrived in Ottawa, and I don't know what the number is that ever actually got to Ottawa. What I can tell you is that if you go just south of Wellington, you couldn't even hear what was going on. I mean, there was no disruption south about, let's say, 5-6 blocks from Wellington. You didn't know what was going on. Traffic was always flowing like 2 blocks away. And
so you don't think that the convoy itself. So my understanding from you and just listening to you is that the good that the people the people that came with the convoy did far more good than bad. Like, is that what you're saying?
Yes, I will say that absolutely we did. Because like we literally we're the ones, we have over 100 affidavits from just people that were in and around Wellington. By the way, that's a business area. That's not residential. So people that are saying, "Hey, I couldn't sleep." Well, I'm sorry.
Well, there's high rises. There's apartments. Like I know people like Paul lives literally half a block away in rent controlled housing. He's got a bunch of stuff going on, and can't sleep for a bunch of days, and literally can't sleep. And we've had people move out of the city. I know, very well. I don't want to get into like the individual parts, but what I'm saying is that as an operation, right? Because this was an operation in your world, right? You come from a world where this is an operation. You guys had Coventry Road. You're bringing in propane and gas. You're making community chili with some suspect ladles. You're building a beaver tail hut. You got porta johns. You got
bouncy castles.
Bouncy castles. You got like you literally went in there and decided you were going to stay there. Until what? What was the goal? Because we'll get to the fallout in a second, but what were you staying for?
Federal mandates had to end.
Right.
And by the way, those federal
mandates, you knew they were coming to an end, right? Like you knew when you were there that was part of the plan?
No, at the time, there was no discussion at all at the time that we arrived that the federal mandates would end. The RCMP were still under a federal mandate. The military was under a federal mandate. All federal employees were under a mandate. And we said all these federal mandates must end. That was my mission statement. I didn't care about any other thing. People bring up the MOU. I had nothing to do with that. A small group of people had some.
That was a beauty, right? Did you read that?
I did. I read that. But, people should understand the MOU was retracted. It was retracted, right?
Well, you can't retract something that was written on a Denny's napkin, but it was terrible. Like the MOU was about like, this is what all of us thought, right? And again, I'll let you back into the mind of someone that wasn't involved from your side. is I see this MOU and I'm like, fucking James Botter probably wrote it because it's so terrible. Number one, turns out it was true. The other part is I'm like, so they want to replace the government with the government of the people that they like better, and they're not leaving until that government gets replaced, right? Yeah. So there's competing interests in terms of what it is that you were trying to do. Some people say mandate, some people say government, some people brought nooses, some people brought, baskets of goodies to share with people. Some people brought hot tubs. I mean, you had a whole bunch of shit that went into this one melting pot of what I call weirdness. And at the end of the day, I mean, that's really what it is. But in my opinion, but when it comes to what it was a purposeful operation to upset the government, upset the people of Ottawa, bring attention to the cause, drop mandates. Like, what were the ancillary goals of this whole thing?
So very, very clearly from the very beginning, I had worked with the police, and several of us that had direct communications with the police. We consistently said to the police that we are not here to upset or, our goal is not against the citizens or the residents of Ottawa. Our beef was with the government of Canada, the federal government, the Liberal Party of Canada. That's who our beef was, because they were the elected official government. That's who we wanted. And we worked hard. I said to them several times, I'm trying to take the pressure off the police and the residents themselves. We're trying to be as less disruptive. Hey, listen, by the time the horn injunction came, a lot of us were like, thank God, no more horns, right? Because they're driving you crazy. But, I was only 3 blocks away from Wellington every night, and I slept like a baby. I didn't have I shouldn't say like a baby. I found out later I did have some sort of flu-like symptom. Might have been COVID, might have been not. I don't know. I just did a normal easy day, protocol. Yeah. I took ivermectin. I took aspirin.
Did you take the horse paste stuff?
No, I took
put it on a cracker.
I took the liquid. Yeah, I mean, and you know what? Almost the entire time I was in Ottawa, I wasn't feeling very good, but I still functioned. I lived.
It's probably amazing. From the ivermectin, Tom. You're not supposed to.
I was feeling. Yeah, exactly. But it also has a Nobel Prize, right? And it's a really good medicine.
Deworming horses and humans. It's anti-parasitic. That's what I never understood.
I don't know.
You weren't feeling great in Ottawa because you were taking.
I know. But I felt pretty bad before, but hey, I considered it. But at the end of the day, I was like, listen, my immune system has evolved to an estimated 200,000 years. Okay. It's like every other cold I've ever been through.
Yeah.
I have an immune system that fights these things off. So I was actually I was like, okay, finally I got it. Maybe I got it. Maybe I don't. I never got tested. I didn't see the point. Because you know what it would have been? Just counted as another case count. And it would have been more fear mongering. I mean, a case count isn't ICU, right? A case count. Whip-de-doo, you got 3,000 case counts. Well, you know what? You look at the fraudulent nature of the PCR tests and all these other things. I mean, case counts
hold on. We're gonna get delisted if you start talking about that again.
Okay, I'll leave it alone.
No medical degrees on the wall.
Okay, all right.
We don't want to talk about that.
I didn't trust the testing. I didn't trust the test. So I thought it was a waste of time.
Did you speak to doctors? Like, did you, was that okay? Did you speak to doctors outside your relationship circle? Did you talk to any infectious disease people? No.
I did talk to people that specialized in that were there.
Okay.
So, but they're
like, don't do it. They're like,
no, they're like, yeah, take it. That's the protocol. I mean, because that protocol came from the United States.
Oh man, right? That's so to me that's not so, because like I was laughing about it, and there's been several thousand studies that have been done. Like they just finished this huge ivermectin study. Again, I don't want to get into it, but and that's why I asked if you've talked to people about it. Like, did you go and speak to these individuals about infectious disease? Because that's where I get all my clues from guys like Fisman and guys like Bogosh and guys like Mario Alia, Dr. Mario, like real legitimate infectious disease doctors. And we're fortunate that we can put them here, right? So I've formulated my opinion on what's going on by knowing that there is something more important than what I want, right? And let me just get into that real quick. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because as I'm listening to you, and I'm so grateful that you took time to kind of come in, and we're not done by any stretch, but to just even talk about this, because you've been, brutally honest. which is what I wanted. But I formulated my opinion on this based on talking to doctors, professionals, medical professionals. And then when I say, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go get 4 shots. First it was 2, and then they moved the goalposts, which you'll hate. And then they moved them again. And now we got bivalent, and we've got other things, and it might be a series. And I'm going to do it every year. I'm going to do it every year because I talked to people and really spent probably 3 to 4 months educating myself, because people were fucking losing it, Tom. This is no good. That's no good. But I also don't have the added benefit of your military experience where you were treated like shit, a medical guinea pig. So I get that. And let's park that over here for now. But I took all my cues from those people. And then the way that I, again, shake this whole thing down, as I listen to you, you're talking about servicing a certain group of people, and based on your ability to control and consent your own body, your life, what's important to you. That's the most important thing here. That is not the most important thing to me. This is the big disconnect that guys like you and I have. I truly believe with everything that I am that the fruit of this life is being of good character and acts for the common good. And because I understood the science and I leaned on really smart people to explain it to me, I knew that if I got vaccinated at the start of this whole thing, I would be part of a solution for my people, my community, people I love, people I don't love, people I don't know, people at the grocery store. To me, it was a civic duty. To me, it was an opportunity to show people around them that I give a shit about them. And I spent a lot of time, and you're probably familiar with my history, getting everything I can out of life for me. And over the past 5 years, my mind changed. My mind changed in terms of, what am I here for? Am I here for myself? Am I here for the common good? Am I here to fight? Am I here to argue with people? And that's kind of brought me to this place, which is like, okay, we've had an incredible opportunity to shit on each other for 2 years, unfettered, to call each other names, theo-fascists, woke assholes, all the other bullshit. And I hate politics almost as much as you do. I hate mainstream media almost as much as you do. And so if I take everything away, all the standing people and things and organizations, institutions, I got Tom, I got Dean, I got my family, you got your family, and there's a disconnect. And that disconnect is, in my opinion, and tell me if I'm wrong, your freedom to decide what's in your best interest matters more than the collective good, the health of the nation, being a good citizen. That doesn't matter to you as much as being able to choose every part of your freedom, every part of your decision, and that decision is based on your belief system. Am I kind of in the ballpark?
You characterize it, and I understand the perspective that you characterize it. And I get that. I do get that perspective. But in this particular case, I think the answer has to be that it doesn't necessarily apply in this particular instance. And this is what should we be productive members of society?
Like decisions for yourself is affect the common good. It stops at this issue.
Because we make many decisions for ourselves all of the time that are just good for us, right? And they have the sort of secondary benefit of maybe being good for the economy. Like, so for example, let's say I'm very well educated. I worked my butt off to get that education. It was never free. I didn't earn anything from the virtue of the pigmentation of my skin. I worked really hard. I came from nothing. I paid my own way. I earned every blood, sweat, and teardrop of education I ever had in my life. And, but my education gets me a better paying job, let's say, supposedly. I mean, theoretically, that's how it's supposed to work. But that means I pay more taxes. I pay a lot more taxes. And that means that if I make more money, I actually get punished by society, because now I'm losing more taxes, and I'm giving it to people that actually sat there and collected CERB or one of these other benefits, right? Or they're on welfare or all these other things. Like I paid a crazy amount of taxes. Don't you find that
we all do, dude? And this is the thing, is that it comes down to, and again, and this is what I'm gathering. It comes down to whether or not you can look outside yourself and see, because you know, you talk about you paying taxes. I'm asking you about respectfully, whether or not, you know, the ability other Canadians have to live in peace, to live in harmony, to enjoy their lives, to be allowed to go and seek the medical treatment they want. And you know what? I'll tell you this. I've come a long way from like, fuck you losers, go get vaccinated. Now I'm at the point where I'm like, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit if you're vaccinated, because I did what was best for my community and for the citizens of Canada. And I feel really good about that. Right.
Okay. Let's take a different sort of angle on this. Okay. And this is where I got to dig a little bit deep into my fictitious medical and science PhD. I got to touch on that a little bit. And my you have a
law
degree as well.
Degree?
Yeah, really? I do now. Yeah, and my law degree as well that I've earned over the last 6 months. But here's the thing: if we look at how these vaccines were pushed through the system, right? They're done under something called.
We can't do that. We can't do the vaccine conversation.
It's an important. It's not that. No, here's the thing. This is risk versus benefit to the society. So let me put it to you this way. We won't touch on the interim order and how this thing was actually authorized to the public. Here's the big question.
Good.
What if you're wrong?
Yeah.
What if you're wrong?
It's called FOMO. Have you heard of FOMO? Fear of missing out?
Yeah, no, well, that's for me, that was always a very big religious question, right? Yeah. But here's the thing. What if you're wrong? Like if I'm wrong, wow, I got COVID and I lived. But
if you're lucky, let me play you something. Let me play you something real quick.
For comorbidities.
Let me play you something real quick.
Sure.
This is a guy I work with. His name's Brenton Donnelly. He was literally patient 23. Yeah. Right. I work with him here at deanblundell.com. Yeah. He's got a podcast called Brenton on Tour. He's also got a podcast called Kids on the Escalator. Great podcast. He put this out this morning, and I didn't know. And I'm like, you know what? This is interesting. This is interesting because what you're talking about is in my opinion, it's one angle, right? What if I'm wrong? Now, I think 83 or 84% of Canadians are double vaccinated. And I'm a hardline vaccine guy. I love the vax me up, give it to me. I get it. Let me understand the science and then we'll go for it. But I don't even understand the science because I'm not a peer professional. I'm not a trained doctor. So I talk to people whose relationships that I trust. When this whole thing happened, I'm like, explain to me, like, fuck, it's like a medical miracle. And we talked about it. We talked about why. And again, I don't have, and I make a big exception when I talk to you about this. I don't have the background that you have, the mistrust that you have of government organizations that fucked you over for a long period of time. And I got lots of time to talk about that and how we get that better for not just you, but all your brothers and sisters and veterans of this country that gave their lives, their health for this country. They're mistreated. I get it. I completely understand it. And I am empathetic to it, which is what makes this a lot easier for me to do, right? Is that you've agreed with your life to protect Canadians, and you did so for 25 years.
Yes.
I think that's what we saw this time was the opposite. It was the opposite, and I'll tell you why. And this is just my opinion, and I'd love your thoughts. I'll tell you why. Because people suffered. People got hurt. Whether or not you choose to agree with it or not. People got injured. People, and when I say injured, I mean mentally, physically, emotionally. You believe, you've said to me, you don't believe Paul is in treatment. I talk to him every day. I can assure you that he is. And he's in treatment for a variety of things, but he's in treatment now because of this. My friend Marianne Iveson had to get counseling immediately after y'all left. And the reason why she had to get counseling is it was difficult for her. There are a lot of people that didn't get paid in those 3 weeks because they had to shut down, jobs. They couldn't get to work, all those things. Just the mass effect, right? From a human standpoint, now, take ideologies out of this, is visiting hurt on people just in case. What if we're right? We're standing up for you if we're right. Those are a lot of hypotheticals to circumcise your life over, in my opinion. Like, to hurt people based on what if we're right, or what if I'm right to be an argument. It's like fire insurance. It's the same reason why I fucking hate religion. I hate religion for the perspective of, hey, listen, you're going to have to dedicate your life to this guy where you give us 10% of everything, and you're going to have to, because listen, you got nothing to lose in the afterlife. We've got a ticket to ride. I don't believe in any of that stuff. What I believe is life is a series of experiences. And no one knows what happens when you cack, when we finally go 6 feet under. And we have and I've said this before, Tommy, 1 in 400 billion quadrillion chance of actually living. So I find this life to be incredibly special, right? And when people show up to ruin that life experience for any reason whatsoever, of a large group of people just trying to get it done, just trying to live, just trying to get to work, just trying to make it happen, trying to have a family, trying to make babies, when I'm sure a lot of babies were made that week, a lot of Convoy babies. But that is legitimately all I think about when I assessed all of this stuff as it was happening, right? And while I'm sitting here talking to you and you're explaining to me, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm right? It doesn't lend itself to the issue that I had with the Convoy and continue to still have with some of the members and some of the fallout from it, which is people were hurt that didn't need to be hurt. People went broke that didn't need to go broke. People couldn't open up restaurants. People that moved to this country that really wanted an opportunity to succeed couldn't succeed for a month. You got people in counseling. You've got an entire country that was like riveted. Borders were closed. You know that. Randy, your boy Randy was all into that. He loved it. He's like, close the fucking borders. Like billions of dollars in trade damage. People couldn't get across the border to see their families. People couldn't actually get into hospitals that were going cross-border to the United States for treatment at Henry Ford that had cancer. I mean, these are all little stories, but they all add up, and they kind of sit in this one bowl in my mind, Tom. Maybe you can help me understand it, is that because you felt the way you felt, that a large group of people came and hurt another large group of people to prove a point. And that's where I sit. That's kind of where how I think about it.
So let's think about it for a minute. I sat in on meetings with the city, and we said to the city, why did you shut down all the businesses? Because we didn't shut the businesses. We actually asked for the city to open up all those businesses because we actually wanted to shop in those places. You know, the truckers were there. They needed supplies. They wanted stuff. They wanted to. The only person that opened up, strangely enough, was the Tim Hortons guy, and he made back 2 years worth of lost wages because the city was shutting them down. We didn't shut it down. That's the problem that people don't understand. We didn't. We asked them to open up all those businesses so that people could shop.
But it's the fallout of it, right? But it's the fallout of it.
Yeah, but here's the other issue too. All Justin Trudeau had to do, like he had done when other people demonstrated in other areas, like out west, and I think with the one of the blockades on the train tracks, all he had to do was send an envoy and actually come out and talk to us. He never did. What did he do? He cowered. He went away. He hid in somebody's basement and played video games.
Dude, would you, if you could avoid meeting Pat King and people that had Nazi flags and Confederate flags and and showed up to your doorstep to take over your government, would you meet with them?
Yeah, you know why? Because they're tax-paying voters and they're Canadian citizens, and you got elected based on people that came there to have a meeting, because for 2.5 years, not one politician in this country gave a shit enough to listen to what the people on the other side were saying. So here's the thing. You know, I personally don't give a crap if somebody gets, chooses their own medical direction that they want to go in. I don't care. Like, if you want to go and get vaccinated, go get vaccinated. I'm not going to stop you. Where I'm going to have an objection to it is if you tell me that I can't work, I can't travel, I can't leave the country, I have to self-quarantine, I have to do all of these things for a medical experiment, because it is still in its medical phases. It has not been approved. No, it's not illegal. It is not a legal drug. No, it is not. It's under an interim order only. It's not. Every 30 days, every 30 days, it gets reapproved by a woman who has a degree in English. She works for Transport Canada.
Again, we're going down this road where we're going to get in
trouble.
It's not,
but it's a big issue. It's a big issue because it's not approved. It hasn't been through clinical trials. You are the experiment.
Yeah, but I'm not. I'm not, because I'm here and I'm healthy and I'm terrific, and everybody that's taken this vaccine has an order of protection over top of their immunity system. You had an order of protection before. No, you didn't.
No, you didn't.
No, you didn't, dude. And I'm not. And again, what? Again,
you never needed it.
Calendar. Tommy, I got a cat shit calendar. There's no medical degree here. There's no medical degree here. I don't want to talk about the medicine, because the reason why I don't want to talk about it is because I believe that you're 100% wrong. And I believe, according to science, that it's irresponsible to share that information with people as if it is true. And you can talk about, this woman who approved. I don't know anything about that. That's the first I've heard of it. And I hear a lot of firsts from people that don't believe in vaccines. And the reason why we hear these firsts, in my opinion, is because you don't want to get vaccinated. And I totally understand that. You've made that painfully clear. But you just said you don't care if other people get vaccinated.
But it's not a vaccine. That's the problem.
But hold it. Then if you said you don't care, then what you can't do is you can't go, in my opinion, you can't go and start shitting on it and telling people it's unsafe and it's experimental and you're fucked.
You can go get it all you want. That's your choice that you're making. I'm not telling people don't get it. What I'm saying and why I went to Ottawa.
You're giving them reasons to not get it and reasons to fear something based on information that you don't have any viable proof of right here.
I've got lots of proof. I got tons of proof for it. But here's the thing: we're not going to go down the doctor, the PhD medical thing. But what my thing, So my issue for this whole thing is, until you told me that I couldn't earn a living, I couldn't travel, I couldn't participate in the rest of society. In fact, Quebec was about to, during the convoy, Quebec was about to deny people the right to go to a grocery store and buy food if they didn't go and partake in a medical experiment that has not made it through. They haven't made through clinical trials.
Again, you can't say it's a medical experiment. That's your opinion.
It hasn't passed clinical trials. It takes between 7 to 10 years to get through a clinical trial. We had this thing made by, anyway, I won't go down that road.
We don't know. But we don't
these things don't
billions
stop
of people have had it, and billions of people are alive, and billions of people have had it easier to go as a result of it.
JT apparently has got 4 doses, but yet he's had COVID, 3-4 times?
Yeah,
I thought it was supposed to prevent it.
I've had it twice. No. That's where you're wrong. And I will say that.
And it's supposed to stop the transmission. It hasn't.
No, it doesn't stop the transmission. No, it doesn't.
Then it's not a vaccine.
No,
it's a
vaccine.
Drug.
Well, no, it is, and I'll tell you why it's a vaccine. The same reason why your flu shot is literally a vaccine, because you're still going to get the flu. It's just not going to be as bad because it trains your body on how to fucking fight it, right? And that the science behind it. If you understand vaccinology, which has been around since like the 1700s here in Canada, believe it or not. Vaccines have been around for a long period of time. And if you go down the road of understanding vaccines, specifically with Jonas Salk and the polio vaccine, which took 20 years to make. So when you talk about the experimentation, I get it. But they literally took as many people as they could on this planet that had legitimate infectious disease research degrees and clinical degrees and said, come up with something real quick. And we're going to try and jimmy rig this thing and figure out a way to make it work. And so you get a couple of shots.
This is mRNA stuff. This isn't a normal vaccine. Like it's a different technology completely altogether. It is not a
and
traditional vaccine.
You and I are both unqualified to have this conversation as fact. Both of us.
Yeah, but at the same time, they even recently, even the CDC updated the definition of what a vaccine is. They've redefined it because they've got a new technology that killed every single animal in the original clinical trials of mRNA technology, and yet here we are having people being told.
Tom, again,
so for polio,
fantastic lane. MMR, I don't want to go down the fantastic lane.
MMR, polio, all these other ones, right?
Yeah.
Nobody ever said, "Hey, you can't be an RCMP officer if you don't have that." When I joined the military, I got mine. Fine, I got the updates. It was part of the thing. I agreed because I trusted the science at the time. But here's the thing. A lot of professions out there, you don't need to go. The only time I ever had to prove vaccination to be an employee in my entire life was when I joined the military. Nobody ever said that. Nobody ever says to me, oh, you can't work here as a draftsman in this engineering firm because you didn't get your small or your polio. Like, how did all of a sudden this become a condition of employment when it wasn't before? And by the way, we have laws against this. Criminal in the Criminal Code of Canada under informed consent, 265(3) says that you cannot use coercion.
That's not what it applies to. It doesn't apply to that pandemic. It goes back to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the reasonable limitations, which is set out at the start of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And we're talking about a legitimately worldwide pandemic that has killed millions and millions and millions of people. Yesterday,
and I don't think it killed millions of people.
Well, then this is weird because yesterday, Health Canada, which you don't believe, 44,370 people dead in this country from COVID in the last 2 years. That is more than World War II in total. That is in 2 years. And so the biggest disconnect that you and I are going to have from this point on in this conversation is going to be that you don't believe any of it. right?
I believe some of it, but I certainly don't believe that the vast
You don't believe
majority.
44,000 people
not
died?
at all.
You don't
Not at
believe
all.
that COVID's
What
a real problem? You don't believe it's a pandemic?
No, what I think is that anybody who had
Who do you think's making it up? Who do you think it's coming from?
I don't know, but what I do think is that the entire medical community has turned their back on logic, reason, and actual science and have embraced political science. And the fact that, you know, the vast majority of the people in the first year that died of COVID had 4 or more comorbidities.
They were
4 or more, right? These are people that were
Diabetes.
susceptible to dying from influenza. And if I talked to,
Which
when I
is
was
still sad,
campaigning,
by the way, Tom,
Yeah.
in my opinion, the
Yeah.
death of a human being is still sad. It's not a footnote in my life. Like, you know, back up a little bit, because you're talking about people who died. I'm talking about people who died. You're saying you don't agree with that number.
I don't.
You don't agree with that COVID is a problem. You think it's made up. Now let's get into that. Where do you think, who's making it up? Who's behind it? What's that?
You know what? If I knew that, I would just go straight to the source. But the one who's pushing it, who's making the laws, are people that we elect to represent us,
right,
as to do the will of the people, not to dictate over and to
in
be
every
kings
country
and
in the
queens.
world.
Yes, absolutely.
And so it's got to come from somewhere in your mind, right? Like, this is where the conspiracy stuff, people go crazy. And you're not a conspiracy theorist, according to you. So tell me where it's coming from, because I want to know that.
I don't have any
behind it. I want to know how they got everybody in on it. I want to know.
Listen, there's a lot of people in the world there's three spheres that I care about. What can I control? What can I influence? Anything outside of that, I don't give a crap about, because it has nothing to do with my ability to control or influence it. What I can control is my ability to go and get a job based on the law that protects me, the employment laws, the Privacy Act, informed consent, and all the other Criminal Code of Canada laws that protect me as an employee. But, you know, we have these laws in place. We've had them in place for years to protect the public from government overreach, which is, by the way, the entire reason the Charter of Rights exists. Is you can't take a charter challenge against Tim Hortons. You can only take a charter challenge against the government or a government agent. Yeah. So we have these things in place that protect us from government overreach, because if not, they'd go absolutely apeshit on the public. Yeah. We know this. So here's the thing, right? When I was campaigning, I talked to a lot of people that worked in the long-term care facilities. And all of them will tell you that the vast majority of people that died in long-term care facilities did not die from COVID. They actually died from starvation and dehydration and malnutrition. And they would get, because Doug Ford refused to let the volunteers in. So all the long-term care facilities rely on 75% of volunteers that go in and help out the short staff that are there, right? He denied access to 75% of the staff that were there. So what was happening?
He's just a cock. He's just a fucking cock. And he wanted people to die, and he doesn't care about anything other than enriching his friends. That's the only thing he fucking cares about.
Because reportedly he made $50 million because he's the guy who made the signs telling everybody to line up and go in one direction in the LCBO.
I don't know about that. But Deco, right? I wondered how many stickers he made during the whole thing. Yeah. Again, that's all stuff that's hearsay. It's out in the atmosphere. Great. Totally understand that you believe that. But that's all stuff that we can't.
But how many? There's none of the kids. There's no kid in Ontario that died of COVID except for one that I'm aware of, and she had multiple comorbidities.
Oh, but like you can't say that though. You're demeaning the human life. You're saying, like, this is what I'm here for. I'm here for this very conversation.
Right?
Is that these are human beings that lost their lives according to a disease that they had, whether they had comorbidities or not. It contributed to it. They died. There are a lot of people that died. Children died. Humans died.
We didn't have a lot of children died. Why we didn't have any children
still died. They still died.
Okay, but children died,
and they wouldn't have died if they didn't have it.
No, that's not even.
Yes, it is
provable. Not in Ontario. Not in Canada.
Because of the comorbidities, dude.
Yeah, that one had comorbidities. That one was at risk to being killed by influenza, unfortunately for that child. But here's the other issue: if these kids had such a low risk to their lives, why did we lock down schools? Why did we put masks on kids that have a poor rate of 80 microns for a virus that has 1?
Well, first of
Why
all,
are we putting masks on
if
people?
someone says a mask is terrorizing kids, their kids and the families are huge pussies in my mind, because I've worn a mask for a year and a half, and I don't think masks are a big deal. The big deal for people that don't want to wear masks has nothing to do with protecting anybody around them. They just don't like them, or they
don't
say
work.
it impedes their
They
breath.
don't work.
And that is not true.
They
Masks
don't work.
absolutely
It
work
says
in
on
as
the
much
side
as a
of the
window
box.
works. No.
It says
No,
on the side of the box
that it doesn't prevent transmission. Yeah, but what's work? You know, but let's define what work. Any kind of barrier that you put between yourself and somebody else
We didn't wear gloves.
is going to add a layer of protection. Same thing with the vaccine.
Gloves.
It's a layer of protection. Well, because it's an airborne disease.
Right. We never wore gloves. We never wore gloves. We didn't. I never
because
saw
it's an
anyone
airborne
cleaning
disease.
off a gas pump. You know,
no, but it's an airborne disease, dude. And we were all and that's the thing too. We were all, and I gave lots of leeway to everybody. We were all finding out about this as it went, right? Everybody was. 2 years, pandemic, millions dead, lockdowns, which sucked, and I fucking hated them all, just as much as you did. But it really comes down, all the conversations that we have really kind of come down to that one thing. You
Shelley's
think this
adorable,
is happening?
by the way.
Who is?
Shelley. She's adorable.
Who's Shelley McShane? I wore gloves. Speak for yourself. Oh, she called you asshole. I didn't see that part. But like,
I'm gonna sleep very well tonight, Shelley.
Well, good for you. But my point is this: is that this was an airborne thing. We tried to get our arms and our ears around it. Doctors didn't know what they were doing. This is how I look at it. And I'll tell you how and I think a lot of people in the center look at it like this, is that we get hit with a pandemic. It's a problem. We get locked down. Nobody knows how bad it is, just that they're literally dying by the thousands in countries over there where this whole thing started. Then it makes its way over here. People start dying and hospitals get packed with people, which then not only packed, we can't service individuals that are actually sick because we've got people in there with this thing that we can't control and we don't know where it comes from. So as a safety precaution, they're like, lock the shit down, lock the businesses down. Nobody wanted to do that. Governments didn't want to do that. People who own the businesses and went to the businesses didn't want to do that. I didn't want to get locked down. Hang on. And then all of a sudden, we have this group of people that think this is just happening to them.
Yeah, but the very government
people are just trying to fuck you over. People are just trying to fuck over you and your friends. And then you got so this is the question I want to ask. Do you think that 84% of people who are fully vaccinated in this country are being hoodwinked? You think that we're crazy? You think I'm crazy?
I do. For taking that experimental injection, I think all of you, I'm sad about it. I'll be honest with you. I think it's going to be a tragedy.
You think we're going to die?
Within the next 5 years, you're going to see a phenomenal amount of these very, very unusual diseases, including the leading one is going to end up being cancer, I'm afraid. And I'm pretty, like you say, bullish on what the outcome is for the fully vaccinated over the next 5 years.
Okay,
but I want to go back to I want to go back to one issue though, because
hang on, but where do you get that from? Because you just said a lot of us are going to die in the next 5 years from cancer. So
you may or may not die of cancer, but there's going to be, in my estimation, and I hope I'm wrong. I'd love to be wrong. I think there's going to be a big die-off, to be honest, with a lot of people that have become vaccinated. And that's all the research and that's all the doctors that I'm talking to that are saying, this is not good. This is not good for what's happening to the human immune system that never needed to partake in mRNA technology.
Clearly it did.
So here's the issue. So the government that you and I both don't like, we both agree that it's extraordinarily incompetent at every level of government, probably in this country. And I go back to what I said in the original part is, why did they just sideline Emergency Management Ontario that is specifically actually has a pandemic response plan? The military has one. It's called Op Laser. I know, I read it. I had to.
Doug did that the same reason why he put the science table on ice, because he doesn't give two fucks about anybody but himself. He wants to be the guy in charge.
Exactly. But you know what?
That's one of the reasons.
Yeah, we elected Doug Ford to make the decisions. We didn't elect Dr. Moore or any chief medical officer. He abdicated his responsibility. Then he came out and he said, hey, by the way, it's political suicide to go against your own chief medical officer. No, political suicide, dumbass. Yeah, it should be that, no, you abdicated your responsibility to an unelected bureaucrat who is not trained in pandemic response.
No, but they are trained in the ways of science during a pandemic, and those are the guys you want to listen to, though, right, Tom?
I have an engineering background, but I don't do electrical engineering. I have an engineering background. I don't do mechanical. I do construction engineering. So, but the thing is this, to say that you're a doctor doesn't mean anything unless you specialize. But here's the thing, doctors are one spoke in an emergency management wheel. This is what EMO was supposed to be for. They were the ones that would have collated all this information, come up with a plan to respond to this. Now, there's a guy named Lieutenant Colonel David Redmond. He was out in Alberta. He was screaming at the government of Alberta because he used to be the head of Emergency Management Alberta. Told them, what in the hell are you people doing? Locking down, masking. You're going to destroy your economy, and there's literally no danger to the vast majority of the public except for our seniors that are 70 years old and up who have comorbidities, because those were the ones that were at the greatest risk. It wasn't the young people. Your age group wasn't even at risk. I mean, you've got for the original COVID.
You saying I'm
well, you're probably my age, but
49 big ones. Dude,
I'm 49.
We both look pretty good for 49. Again, common ground.
Yeah.
Right. But back. Let's back that up and get into it.
So I want to say though that the level of incompetence that every government displayed, they literally sidelined. That's like saying, hey, there's a crime being committed. I'm not going to put the police in charge. I'm going to go get this. I'm going to get a paramedic because he wears a uniform, and I'm going to send him over to the crime. I mean, it's ridiculous that we put a guy like Moore in charge. He's an unelected bureaucrat. He's incompetent.
Well, I don't think any politician should ever make, unless that politician has an infectious disease background. I don't think any politician should make any public health decisions on behalf of anybody. No, we don't.
We have to get them. They're the only ones legally with the authority to make the final decisions. It shouldn't be medical officers.
No, the public health authority. No, the PHUs of almost every single region in this country have the ability to enact that, and then they have the ability to go and say, "Hey, listen,
let's put them in charge of war. Let's put them in charge of riots. Let's put them in charge of forest fires too." That's what EMO does. EMO during the G10 G8 G20 summit in 2010 in Toronto, which I participated in as a low-level duty officer. EMO was involved in that in case there was a mass casualty. They were going to be the ones, the coordination center, to pick up all the pieces. That is their job. That's their role. Every province in this country has one of these emergency management. You can do a master's degree in emergency management from York University, and yet we sideline them. We didn't use them for what they were intended. We just said, okay, buddy, you got a doctorate, or you're an MD. You're now in charge of the economy. That's what we did. We let this donkey. Let this donkey rip apart.
Every federal cabinet minister is like, I know a federal cabinet minister that came from media. That's a federal cabinet minister of diversity. And she doesn't know anything about fucking diversity. We know we've got provincial cabinet members that who was that last fucking jack off that we had? What was her name again? Oh, Sylvia Jones. She's in charge of healthcare. She's fucking over everybody in this province. And you know what her background is? Not fucking healthcare. I'll tell you that. That's what politics is, though. It's always been that way. And so when I listen to you, and we go back to you saying that you think I'm crazy, and you think anybody who got the vaccine that got the shot has been hoodwinked. How have we been brainwashed? Like, what is it that you think we're brainwashed with?
Fear. It was fear. It was done to you 24/7, pure fear. Because
fear of what?
And it was fear of getting COVID and dying of COVID. And yet the thousands, I'd say at least 6 million people in Canada decided, hey, I ain't doing that shit. And guess what? All of them said, I've done my own personal assessment on the risks to the benefit. And I feel that statistically speaking, I've got a 0.003% chance of dying from COVID. I'm not going to take a risk with an experimental injection that hasn't made it through clinical trials.
Again, and it's going to, dude, you can't do the
experiment. It hasn't though. It hasn't made it.
Yes, it has. They wouldn't give it to people if they did.
Let's come back in a week. We'll come back in a week. You get your.
I'll bring the guy evidence from Moderna, and you can bring your guy from wherever.
I'll bring. What I'll do is I'll bring the cross examination, the recording of the cross examination of the person who in this country. There's one person in this country authorized to sign off on the interim order every 30 days, and she does it based on the advice of a document she can't even read herself from Health Canada. But yet she's the only one.
Proof, because I don't believe
I can. Any of that. I'll send it to you. All right, and then you can look at it, because every 30 days, one woman in this country who works for Transport Canada, she rubber stamps the interim order, which allows the government to use the vaccine, even though it hasn't passed clinical trials, which won't be completed until 2024. They're not done. You're the experiment, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't agree with you at all. I'm happy to get it.
It's okay.
Fuck, if they said to me, Dean, you got to get a vaccine every 5 years and it needs to be put in the tip of your winky, I'd be like, all right.
But why?
Shove it in the tip of the winky. Well, because what I do, which a lot, hang on, what I do is a lot of different people that say to me, your vaccine stuff's bullshit. I'm like, well, whatever. What does it harm if I got one? And you're like, well, I'm really concerned about you. But if you're really concerned about me, you wouldn't be shit. Not you. These people wouldn't be shit posting me. You wouldn't be going to Ottawa. If you're really concerned about individuals' health, you wouldn't be hurting them along the way. Let me put this up on the screen too. This is Brent. We worked with him. I was going to play it earlier. He's got long COVID. He's been fucked for 2 years. So I'd be interested to get your thoughts on this.
What's up, friends? A little fly your flag and long COVID. I say that chat today about long COVID. Dare I say that again? I can't say that. That doesn't exist. That's not real. It's a pandemic. Guess what? I went through the eastern part of America on this trip. Through Ohio and through Georgia and down into Texas, and where all the humidity basically, melts your skin off your bones, and was having a hard time breathing again. And listen, for the record, there's no agenda here. I'm not right or left. I live in the middle, okay? I've got friends on both sides of the equation. I'm not pushing some agenda here. I'm just speaking about what I went through. Through this process, I've spoken to at least 10 doctors all over North America and around the world that were curious about my condition, which has gotten, cleared up, but then got worse again, which I discovered over humidity and temperature changes and stuff like that, things that were never part of my life before. They all have the same diagnosis. It's like they went to school to become a doctor. And they all graduated with kind of the same information. And don't get me started on the alternate doctors and all the rest of it, because I don't care. If there's 1 million and 100,000 have something to say and 900,000 have the same thing to say, sorry, friends, I'm going with the 900, including the 10 that I spoke to, including doctors on both the right and the left that have all given me the same diagnosis and all determined what I was going through with my lungs, and it was all the same thing. The most telling portion of that is the right doctors, from Texas and things like that, where you would expect them to just be like, drink some water, you'll be fine, walk it off. No, they're all the way in and telling me exactly what I'm going through. Imagine that. I'm back on this. Don't give me your shit about long COVID not being a thing. You sound ridiculous. Go fly your flag and
yeah, the flags have all been statements, haven't they? I can't wait to get out of the flag era. That'd be great. It's flag season. I fucking hate the flags. Anyway, your thoughts on what he's going through? Is that in your mind? Is he psychosomatic? He's making it up?
No, I think there are more than one COVID, right? COVID's been around for quite some time. I mean, they didn't just come up and say, "Oh, wow, COVID is a brand new thing." There's been like different strains of COVID for years. Like SARS-1 was a COVID. So, I think what the real challenge is this, trying to pick apart an isolated medical issue with the vast majority of the people having the exact same issues. Like, unfortunately, he's had a bad reaction to COVID, but you don't know what his other ailments are. And I mean, if it takes 10 doctors to try to figure out what's going on with him, then I would suggest that maybe he has different comorbidities of some kind that maybe he wasn't aware of before.
No, but he keeps going back and he keeps getting the same message from 10 different doctors over the past 2 years, because he's desperate to get rid of his long COVID issues. There's a lady that we work with named Christy O'Hare. She still can't go up a flight of stairs. She sleeps for 10 hours a day. She's got no other comorbidities, not one single comorbidity. She has brain fog. She's got all the issues, and she got COVID early. It seemed to get a little bit better with vaccines, to believe it or not. I know you don't want to believe that, but that's what she said.
Yeah,
and I agree with her because because Brent's got a little bit better after he got vaccinated. These are all early COVID people that are all suffering terribly, and millions and millions and millions of people around the world are coming up individually with their own. There's long COVID like universities. There's literally like it's a race to help these people that are living with, in some cases, real debilitating issues that they got from this disease that you don't believe is real.
No, I believe COVID is real. What I don't believe is that COVID, for the vast, vast majority of the world population without comorbidities, do I believe that COVID is life-threatening? I don't believe that for a second. I don't. I don't think it's any worse than, like, I mean, hey, what I had in February, and I never got tested, so I can't really confirm it. I was told that I had Omicron. I met all the symptoms of Omicron. I didn't care either way whether I got Omicron or not, or Delta. And
but your physiology is different than everybody else's, right? Everybody reacts differently.
Everybody does, and that's the whole point with this guy on the video. And unfortunately, he's got a physiology that is reacting really, really poorly to COVID.
Okay, so what's the harm in allowing these people, right? Like you said, you don't care if people get vaccinated. What is the harm in allowing these people their truth? You knowing your truth, carrying on with your life, and not inserting your truth into their lives, which, by the way, the vast majority of people find what you're saying cray-cray.
Okay,
right?
So here, let me answer that question. The difference is this. I'm not calling for the government to lock you down, lock you in your house, make you lose your job, stop you from traveling, getting on public transportation if you do take it. But the reverse is happening, where I'm saying I actually believe in my own body's immune system, and I don't believe that this thing is nearly as safe as the government thinks it is. When I look at the risk benefit analysis to this, I think I'm on the right side of it. And in fact, the actual in-place laws support my position to my own bodily autonomy in the rules in the laws governing informed consent and the Privacy Act. So nobody's taking away somebody's employment if you choose to go and get vaccinated. We're not saying, hey, if you get vaccinated, you're kicked out as a society. But that's exactly what's happening to us. We're losing our bodily autonomy, freedom of expression, because we're all being censored for everything that we say. Because, there is no scientific dissension between the scientists, because only the ones that are for vaccines get the microphone. There's no debate. The science table was challenged to several debates. They declined. Doug Ford declined. So there's been no open discussion for the scientists to come together. The College of Physicians and Surgeons has literally threatened and gone in and violated the laws around Privacy Act, going in and seizing people's personal medical files from a doctor who's saying, I'll give you an exemption because I happen to know that you are at risk to any vaccine. But yet we don't hear about that stuff because it's censored and you're not allowed to hear it. And all the legacy media or mainstream media, or let's say government funded media, they have a narrative that is in line with Justin Trudeau and Doug Ford and all that stuff. Yeah. And you're not allowed to be told what the other side is, because our side of the argument right now is, hey, take it. We can't stop you. We won't stop you. You've got the right to choose for yourself. But where we're objecting is when you're imposing your will on us for something we don't think is life-threatening.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
But what do you say to someone who says? What do you say to someone who says, like, there are doctors out there, legitimate doctors, the vast majority? Because listen, if you want to ratio this thing and bring it down to math, if there are 100 doctors on this planet that weigh in on COVID, 99.4% of them are like, it's fucking brilliant. Get it. You need a level of protection against an infectious disease, and then. Like
why have 18 doctors in Ontario died
on your side going, hey, you know what? Don't get it. And I find the connection to religion, connection to ideologies to be the real fly in the ointment for those guys. That's just how I think.
I don't make that. I understand sort of the theology of that. I understand some of the teaching. That I don't really buy into that argument that is a major motivation for people to reject the vaccine. I think a lot of them went, you know what? I'm really impressed with my immune system that got humanity at least an estimated 200,000 years to 200 years ago before vaccines came in, right? How did human beings live through the plague and all that? No, of course they didn't.
You know, life expectancy during the plague was 24.
Yeah, but yeah,
like we've come a long way, and we've evolved, in science. We've evolved in our understanding of what it takes to protect ourselves. We've evolved in vaccines, and I find it absolutely banana land to think that there is a movement out there that wants to kill like 80% of us in the next 5 years, and literally give over the world and the planet to people who protest and like to, you know, make chili cookouts in the middle of Bank Street and that kind of stuff.
Well, all I'm going to say about Ottawa is that, you know, the noise, I don't believe the noise to be all that excessive after the injunction. Before the injunction, yeah, I'll agree. It was annoying as shit. Absolutely, it was. But it stopped, you know, to the best of our ability, it did stop. And yeah, you know, people showed up on weekends and they had a big party, just like what happens every Canada Day weekend or every other celebration.
Some of those parties looked pretty fun, I'll be honest with you.
They were, you know what? There were literally bouncy castles. There was a big, massive pig roast. There was all sorts of fun. Like thousands of people came and it was enjoyable. They partied. They had fun, just like Canada Day. But hey, you don't buy a house beside Pearson International Airport and then complain, piss and moan because it's noisy, right? Why do you live in the nation's capital of protest and then complain that there's protests there all the time? I mean,
well, because it was almost a month long, and the horns lasted for 2 solid fucking weeks.
No,
and
it was only about 6 days.
Couldn't get to work.
It was 6 days. It was 6 days tops that the horns lasted, and those people could have gone to work. We cleaned the bloody sidewalk so they could walk down there and get to work or get on transit. We were only in a very small, we were on like a couple of streets in a small isolated section of town that the vast majority of those people don't go to anyway, because they weren't even in session, the politicians. We weren't near the university. Well, we weren't near we weren't, well, actually a lot of them like were coming out and saying, well, you know, we walked in there. Like there's a street just one back from Wellington. I don't remember the name of it, but that's where all the government buildings were. They were actually in session, you know, in their offices working, because they walked and everything was wide open. The thing is, you know, here's the other issue. We didn't block the streets. We actually kept a lane on every, listen, I guarantee you, we kept a lane on every single street except for Wellington. And you know who blocked it? The Ottawa police with concrete barriers.
Yeah, I know.
They had heavy equipment, police, and concrete barriers that they blocked all the streets from moving. It wasn't us. We kept safety lanes over. You want to know why? Because during the convoy, my son went by ambulance to the hospital one night. So it reaffirmed that, holy shit, I need to make sure that
again, that's personal need, but did he go to the convoy with you? You took your son with you?
No. He was at home, but because I was aware of these medical needs, we agreed as a convoy, the entire thing said, we will always keep emergency lanes open so that it's safe for the public that live here and for everybody. We did that deliberately, and we coordinated with the police. The thing is that every time we tried to work with the police, oftentimes they would act in bad faith. We'd move away from a fire hydrant. You know what they do? They park a cop car in front of the fire hydrant, or they put concrete barriers in intersections. It wasn't us.
Oh, they're the police.
They're the police, right?
And it was a 3-week protest. So what's your life been like since? Rumors of frozen bank accounts. Take me through. So, you know, you're watching your buddies get arrested, right? You watch Tammy get arrested. You watch Chris get arrested. BJ Dichter, I don't know where he went, but he just bugged right out. Paul Alexander, who knows? He split too. But what has your life been like since the convoy? What has happened? How have you been negatively affected?
So yeah, I did have my bank accounts were frozen for the duration of the Emergency Act, and when that was done, then it was, you know, I got access to that. The only thing that really torqued me about that was the credit card that I had on file for my son's heart medication was frozen, and he couldn't get his medication. But here's the important thing: I was never charged. I was never convicted. There was no warrants for my arrest, but yet they went after all my financial assets using a mechanism of government that is specifically restricted to domestic and international terrorism, while we were actually ruled by a judge that we had a right to protest. So, you know, how is it that my son's life, he couldn't get his medication because they used an anti-terrorism legislation to freeze people's bank accounts? Well, makes no sense.
No, agreed. That is a terrible thing to have happened. But did you like when the rubber started meeting the road and you're involved in these conversations? Hey, we're going to freeze bank accounts. We're going to fucking arrest you guys if you don't bug out. Do you feel like your actions had something to do with that, or do you feel like this happened to you and you don't understand why they're so mad that they froze your bank accounts, arrested your friends, and engaged the Emergency Act? Because that to me I find incredible. It's like when people go and do something, and I tweeted this the other day, is that I'm in charge of everything I say, I'm in charge of everything I do, and I need to weigh all the consequences of the things I say and do before I say and do them. And it defies my logic, and maybe you can fill me in, defies my logic to think you did what you did with this group of people and the consequences were visited upon you, and you don't take any responsibility for any of it.
No, I don't take responsibility for it, and I'll tell you why.
Makes sense.
Because one, we do have it is literally a constitutional right to protest. We had a judge who ruled that we actually had a right to be there. We opened up safety lanes in the city of Ottawa there, and we made sure that all emergency vehicles could get there. We asked the city to open up all the businesses so people could do it. Everybody could get to and from work. The amount of space we actually took up in the city of Ottawa was literally no more than, I would say, 10 streets, all right up close to Parliament. It's a million population in the city. So how is it that we disrupted all people south of the 416? We were in a very small, confined space. We didn't block the major roads. It was the Ottawa police that blocked all the major roads. Okay, so here's the thing. The city of Ottawa declares a state of emergency. Doug Ford declares a provincial emergency. And then Justin Trudeau needed on top of that, the Emergency Act to go in.
Well, because you went there, We're there for a month.
Because we objected, and all he had to do was actually come out and actually send an envoy to sit down and talk to people.
He's not talking to you guys.
No, because he's a coward and he's an imbecile.
I wouldn't either. Like if someone showed up on my doorstep and said, "Hey, we're going to bang pots and pans and deputize soccer moms to become secret police," if someone came to my step and they're like, "We want you to leave your house and we're not leaving till you do," I'd be like, "Well, guess what? I'm going to fucking make your life absolutely miserable." That's what I'm going to do.
How did we get to that point, though? For 2 years, nobody would listen. Nobody would hear our side. We were getting shut. Yeah, we were getting shut out of grocery stores in Quebec is what they were trying to do. I saw the videos where a couple stores actually did it. You're getting threatened.
You don't find that funny at all? I find that funny.
No, I grow most of my own food anyway. But the issue, But what really torques me is the fact that all of the laws in this country were violated against the very tax-paying voter public, legally voting. Well, everybody in Canada, right? So this is the issue. If you're elected, you're not elected to be the king or queen. You're elected to be a representative. Okay, and now I
protect the people of this country. That's the number
one. Yeah, but let's have the debate. Let's have the debate about the actual science publicly. And they denied everybody their right to hear the debate with the censorship. Look at all the big tech people. Look at what YouTube does. Look what everybody is doing. Now all these other different websites has popped up where you got to get information because YouTube will censor everything. So if you're trying to stifle debate, if you stifle all of the debate, if you hide it, if you deliberately go out of your way to make sure nobody can see the other side of the argument, that is censorship and it's propaganda.
So hang on just a second. I'll tell you how I look at that. I look at that like, okay, we've got the world's greatest infectious disease experts, every university, every government, every medical health authority across this planet, every single country, every single person is saying, by the way, anybody that tells you this vaccine doesn't work is full of shit. And so what they did was they decided we don't need people an excuse for this to prolong. We don't want the pandemic to continue. We don't want it to mutate. We've got these vaccines. Let's get it in as many people as we can, and let's appeal to their better angels to do something on behalf of their citizenry.
But you realize a lot of the truckers were vaccinated, right?
Well, you realize they weren't all truckers, right?
Like, they
were hiding behind the trucker thing. Yeah,
but you look at Chris Barber himself, one of the 3 original starters of the Convoy was vaccinated. Right. And this was the issue.
He was pissed about it. He was angry.
Yeah, this is not just a single issue about the coercion in order to force people to take this injection. It was also about the privacy, your medical privacy. How all of a sudden, if nobody can ask me about my private medical information, does the the waiter at some restaurant all of a sudden get carte blanche with my medical history. Like somebody asked me if I was vaccinated. I said, "Did you masturbate this morning?" And they're like,
Did you
I said,
really
"It's
ask
none of your
that?
business." Yes, I did. It was on Twitter. I'm like, "Well, it's none of your business, is it?" Right.
And yes, I did.
Yeah, but here's the issue: is that like there are too many laws that were violated in for something that we on this side don't believe it was as life threatening. Now, I'm going to say this too: all the people on your side of the argument that you're talking about are the governments. Like the very incompetent people that you and I both can't stand are the ones going around listening to. And here's the second piece that
I
I
don't give
want
a
to
shit
say.
about any of those people.
All the
Dude, I don't
license,
care about the
all
government. I
yeah,
don't care about the
yeah,
media. I don't care about anybody else's
yeah.
opinion. I care about doing what's best for
But
myself
most
with
of
as
those
much information
doctors,
as I
yeah,
can, and
yeah.
specifically as it relates to people around me. And that's it.
Yes. But all of those doctors that bid in or, jumped right on board of the whole vaccine thing, when they go to med school, they only get 48 hours worth of vaccine lectures in their whole 3 years of med school. But here's the other issue. The College of Physicians and Surgeons and they're the ones who were threatening doctors. If you go against what we're telling you, by the way, there are licensing boards.
Irresponsible and we were in a public health pandemic, which you don't believe is real. So that's the disconnect, right?
I don't believe
well,
it
and that's
was
the thing
pandemic.
is that you got the mass majority of the world that's like, fuck, give it to us, bang bang, and we got the vaccine, everybody's happy. And and we've got you saying you don't believe that this is real. And so what, in my estimation,
I don't think it's life threatening. I don't think it was life
which
threatening.
is also
any
not
more
accurate,
than
according to
influenza.
every major medical university
Influenza
on the
is
planet.
life threatening.
Well,
Influenza is life threatening as much as
so is
COVID
getting out of
is.
the car in busy traffic. But this is
I
different
agree.
because this is something that you can't see, can't feel, can't see, can't touch. It's killing people, making people sick. So
Yes.
like from that, when it's aerosol based. We all know that. It's whether you think it's as bad as it is or not, doesn't mean it isn't here. It doesn't mean you don't take as many precautions as you can for the most marginalized. And that's where I sit, and I'll never get off that thing. And the reason why I won't get off it, Tom, is because as much as I want to talk to you today, I literally, as I've watched you over the past, 6 months, I've watched, which is why I asked about your knife being negatively affected. I've watched you get your bank account frozen, and I'm very sorry that I made fun of your living situation as well. I shouldn't have done that. But you said you were living in your car, and I'm like, fuck, that's not right either. This guy's a veteran, and we got to take care of our veterans. And so, what I wanted to do in having you
let
on
me clarify
today was
that point about the car, though. Yeah.
Okay, please.
Let me clarify that. So, that particular crowd that I was talking to that day on Canada Day, when I said that I was in, and so I'll freely admit I did misspeak the way that came out, but I wasn't really given an opportunity during that with that crowd to clarify what I was trying to say. I have been living constantly, driving, traveling, going all over the place, talking to people, going to meetings, doing all these things. Yes, my former spouse and I have separated, and the living conditions are a little bit precarious at best. But I'm actually very, very happy with where I live and the way I'm living. But when I said that I'm living, I did lose a lot. I lost my job. I lost relationships. I lost family. When I was at the Convoy, I had family members screaming at me, telling me to take the job, go home, stop using the last name so that they don't get their bank accounts frozen. People on this side have been vilified, the 6 million of us, against, the remaining portions of the society. And all we're saying is just leave us the hell alone. Just leave us alone. You do what's right for you. And if you take the vaccine and it does what it's supposed to do, then it should protect you. I don't want to partake in it, but we've given up everything on this side of it. Why? Because people refuse to do what you're doing today, which is to have a tough conversation, right? You reached out to me. I gladly, in fact, people should know that I actually was hoping, I was almost going to make the same offer to you. Let's sit down and have a talk. But here's the thing. Every household that is at opposite ends of this in this entire country refused to do that. Relationships were lost, friendships were lost, families were lost, because people refused to hear our side of the story. And they called us all sorts of vile names, conspiracy theorists, everything. And so we've lost friends, families, coworkers, jobs, our ability to travel, to go around, to even freely express ourselves, which by itself is supposed to be a charter right. to express yourself, to have the freedom of expression. But we were denied all of that stuff, and all we wanted to do was to be equally heard in case you guys are wrong. Because if you're wrong, if I'm wrong, I get COVID and I'm going to live. If you're wrong about the vaccine, if you're wrong, you're going to die or be maimed or get a severe disease. If you're right, if I'm right,
we're going to be fine. Yeah,
you're going to be fine. But nobody's taking away your rights if you're right.
But there's also a middle ground there, right? Which is where I'm trying to get to. I think most of what Paul, you said. Yeah,
right, Paul, you're awesome too, and so's Frank.
I love that. Paul's
Frank,
back in.
Yeah, Frank is, but I find it interesting.
Where's
Frank follows me. He was in there somewhere.
Frank Peterson. Yeah, we got Frank
Peterson. He follows me on stuff apparently, and I don't know, is he a stalker? He likes stalk women.
There are lots of, you know how it works on Twitter, right? Everybody shit posts and says stuff, and then you take a side. But listen, I don't have a side. Frank says, I don't know, whatever.
I like to stalk women.
Some guy can't get laid. And Paul, this is Blue Jacket guy. This is his last comment. Reasonable limits on your freedom of expression. They always ignore that. I mean, people are
okay. What are the let's ask that. Let's look at the reasonable limits of your freedom. Yeah. What are the reasonable limits of your freedom?
Well, see, let's project that. Why don't we do that as an exercise together, you and me, Tommy? Let's project that. Reasonable limits. Do you think it's reasonable? Like if someone was pissed off at you, and they said, you know what, Tom, I'm going to sit outside your house. I'm going to make noise until you come out and talk to me, and you don't owe him that. You don't know that person. That person is impinging your personal freedom. Do you make an allowance for that because of what you went through, or is that a different scenario for you?
If for 2 years that guy was calling me, sending me messages, trying to communicate,
or would you think this guy's a fucking stalker and there's no way I should go outside if he was doing it for 2 years?
Yeah, well, if for 2 years, like I think for a day, if the guy come out for a day, I go out and say, "What's the problem?"
Yeah.
And then I would actually have that conversation. I'm not worried. Listen, I've been doing martial arts and Krav Maga for years. I'm not worried about my personal safety with anybody on this planet.
But I know that's different though. I'm talking about the analogy. The analogy is the same. The analogy is someone's going to visit some harm on you in some capacity because they don't like you and they're not leaving until you come out. And then you get sick of it and someone says, hey, come get rid of this guy. And someone comes and gets rid of this guy. And then you say to that guy, why did you do this? And he's like, because he didn't return my calls for 2 years. Don't you find that to be weird?
But if let's take your analogy, and I said, and the guy's actually out there cleaning my sidewalk and making, little old ladies be able to safely cross the road, and he's making sure ambulances can get by, and he's plowing the road in the winter, and he's collecting my garbage, right? And he's actually helping people get to their jobs. Fine, I'll go out and have a conversation.
I didn't see a lot of that. That's strange. I didn't see much of that.
Listen, if you had gone to Ottawa and along the wall,
you and I would have fought. We would have been a fist fight.
I'm telling you, I know
style boxing, bang, bang, bang.
I know a couple of mainstream media people that worked in the business. They went to see it for themselves, and they've done a complete 180. And you look at Rupa. Rupa was hardcore like you against vaccinated people. She's done a 180.
She's insane.
But you look at a lot of the other, like Heather Prosack, who lost her job because she wanted to see it from her own eyes. She was in media. She went back. She got fired just because she had the guts to go see for herself from Calgary.
Yeah.
And this is the issue is that, a lot of people that didn't go to Ottawa actually come out and I know as soon as I read this or I talk to people, I know the moment they start attacking me, I know the moment that they're regurgitating mainstream media sound bites and they're not thinking for themselves. They're not doing research at all. And I know that, so I don't have to engage with that. It's like you're not my target audience to have a discussion with. It doesn't matter to me what you think about me or my side of the aisle. Do what you want to do, because I'm never going to impose my will on what you want to do. But what I'm going to do is defend myself against what I think is unreasonable limits on my liberties for something that I don't believe is justified. I don't believe that the governments of this world did to its own people on behalf of something that only had a 0.003% chance of killing me. which influenza has a 0.004% chance of killing me of my age group.
Do you get a flu shot?
No, I don't. I don't get flu shots. There's no way in hell. There's no way in hell.
Are you against big men?
I don't know. Well? We'll see. Listen. I want to raise one interesting point to you. Okay.
Sure.
And this is gonna get people going ballistic. One of the reasons
demonetized on YouTube.
Yeah. No, I promise it won't. I promise it won't. Okay. One of the reasons why we have an explosion of let's go back to the Black Plague. Okay. This was caused because in Europe they had mice they were mixing their sanitary storm sewer and they were getting infected from the mice, the filth that they were that they had throughout Europe for the Black Plague. That's where it actually came from. It started, and they were drinking from these disgusting sources of water. If you look at actually the trends, if you look at all of the diseases that we have in the first world nations, when we started to actually have sanitary water, like when we came up with the technology, the science and the technology to clean our drinking water and start plumbing it literally into our homes, our businesses, and all of our infrastructure, that actually showed the trend of all these all these viruses and all these diseases started to decline rapidly. And coupled that, when we started to learn more about germs and stuff like that, then public health started to say, hey, if you wash your hands, wash your body, use soap, clean yourself, use sanitary practices, your life is going to get measurably better. Now, if you look, why do you have to take a vaccine when you go off to a third world country where they don't have clean drinking water? It's because those diseases still exist in those environments. They still get the vaccine, but those diseases exist in those environments because they drink out of disgusting sources of water. We don't have that in North America or Western civilization. We literally plumb drinking water into our toilets. And that's why we're so healthy. That's why humans have been able to fight off viruses for years. And in 1963, MMR was produced and put out to the public. And if you look at the graph on MMR, it was on the decline the moment we started plumbing clean drinking water and washing our hands with soap inside our own homes.
Yeah, plumbing people don't realize, and I will say this, is that people don't realize how important indoor plumbing has been to life expectancy. It's the number one reason why child mortality rates have gone up. It's the number one reason why the Western world and our mortality rates are so high. But it doesn't explain COVID. It doesn't explain the vaccine because that is aerosol based. That is different. That's the first time in human history other than SARS-CoV-1, which I also went through, which my family was actually quarantined for. I get all of that stuff, all the shit, how it works. I totally understand it. But we're getting away from the concept here. And the concept is that, again, going back to the original thing, is that what goes into you not believing that COVID is a deadly disease that has killed millions of people, or 44,000 and plus in this country. What went into that? What went into you thinking I'm crazy? What went into you thinking people are going to die of cancer or other issues from the vaccine? And this is a big conspiracy theory against healthy people, because that's what you've been telling me, right? What went into creating this Tom Marazzo that believed in this so much that he has negatively impacted his life to an extreme degree?
Yeah. So first off, right away, it took probably the first 8 months of COVID for me to even come across one person that actually had COVID, which was kind of telling. If this thing is so deadly, where the hell are all the COVID people in my life? I am not seeing any of them, like for a good solid 8 months. Second thing is I started looking at the numbers, right? I was very, very keenly interested in the numbers, and all we kept hearing was case count, 3,000 case count. Well, you know what? What they do? You got a case count. Why are you tracking case count? I was interested in ICU. I was interested in what they were attributing.
What sources did you use?
All off the mainstream media, off the internet, like where they were reporting it daily. So then I've got a couple of friends that are physicians, and I would call them up and I'd say, hey, what's your thought on this? Because this case count, this is all, this big basket, this giant scary number over here that the media is pumping out is fear. It's just fear porn. That's all it was. I said, I'm really interested in the ICU beds. And now with the ICU beds, now let's go back in time and look at the ICU beds from previous years attributed to influenza.
Yeah.
And in the very beginning of this, what got me suspicious is I listened to an interview with, it was December when it was still in China. And I listened to a CBC report when it was not Bonnie Henry, it's the other one in Ottawa.
Tam?
What's her name?
Teresa
Teresa Tam. And she
You
was
guys
coming
hate her,
out.
huh?
Yeah, because I don't like her.
Doctor?
I don't know. I don't know if she's a doctor or not. But, she's the one running around telling people they should have sex with 2 masks on their face. My thought is put a bag on yours and call it even.
Oh, that's mean.
It is mean. But
can I say this? Do you remember when they were like, hey, the monkeypox is running around? And then as soon as it happened, they're like, here are the vaccinations. But I laughed my ass off when they're like, the first thing the CDC put out was like, by the way, here's how you have sex if you have monkeypox.
Yeah. And they say it with a straight face, right? They just do.
And one of them was like, cover up your sores. And I'm like, oh my God, here we go. The other one was like, use a condom. The other one was like, have over the clothes sex. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, why don't you tell them just go get vaccinated or to give them
social distance. Social distance.
Why don't you just not have sex for a couple of weeks and let it run its course? That didn't go in there. Condoms, by the way.
No. So Bonnie Henry, I listened to her on CBC as I was actually driving to the job I used to have that got taken away from me because I refused to partake in this
I'm
experiment.
Sensing some anger.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's stupid. It's just stupid, right? But I'm listening to her and she came out and said, yeah, this Wuhan thing, it's people die of influenza. Something like, I remember her saying something like 400,000, not 400, that can't be a right number. That's ridiculous. But a huge number of people in Canada die of influenza every cold and flu season. And she said, we're looking at this Wuhan thing and we're seeing the same sort of trend. This is no different than influenza. So time goes on, the situation fundamentally starts to change, and so does the narrative. And I'm like, well, what happened to the science you were talking about a long time ago? And it just didn't make any sense to me what the official fear porn from the mainstream media was. Now, if the mainstream media says something, I've always looked in the opposite direction for what probably passes for the truth, right? I don't listen to the mainstream media for the, I don't even listen to it. I can't even watch it anymore.
So how do you get your information now? By the way, the flu, 69% of positive detections of influenza in 2021, positivity and mortality did not exceed 0.001%. So it's a different number. But anyway,
19,
21.
In 21, yeah. So I was looking earlier. I didn't look at the 21 numbers. I was looking at the numbers in 2021. Yeah. And at the time when I read it, I was, and it's broken down by age categories as well, right? The older you get, the more deadly it is to you, which is why
it's got a few different categories like comorbidity, older, exactly, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. So to look at the statistics of the numbers, I was just looking at it. I'm like, this doesn't add up to me. So that's really where I started to get much more suspicious of what we were being told. And then when you look at op laser,
so if I'm just going to recap. So you're saying you started listening to people, you started listening to doctors, mainstream media, you started doing research, and the numbers didn't add up. Which specific numbers were those?
The case counts and the ICU beds, the fatality rates versus the all deaths and all that stuff from previous years, and I was comparing it to what I was seeing at the time. And then there's a couple of friends of mine that are physicians that in the early days were like, yeah, I don't get this. It didn't make a lot of sense to them as well. So in the beginning of the whole pandemic, though, I was being extremely cautious. Mm-hmm. I was being as cautious as I possibly could. I didn't want to be reckless. I mean, it's about being responsible, but analyzing the data and looking at the plan. I mean, most people in the military, at least, the senior NCOs, the officers, we spend our whole careers critically thinking about the facts. we make deductions, and from deductions, we actually make courses of actions. We make plans off of, facts that we can verify. And I mean, this is how you fight, and you plan to fight a war.
So
this is how you go against.
Yeah. And do you know the names of the doctors that you talked to that told you that this whole thing was a ruse?
I do know them personally, and I won't tell them who they are here, obviously, because they'd be furious if I gave their names in public. But yeah, I know them personally, and
known them for a long time.
And some of them, absolutely.
Same kind of background, same kind of like you big guys you've been around a long time, guys that you understand, guys that you
my
get along
age.
With.
Yeah, my age, but not a very, very different upbringing, totally different background to me, like very mainstream, very different backgrounds than my life.
All right.
So, because in the very beginning of this, I was very fascinated to know what kind of person rejected the narrative and what kind of person accepted the narrative. I was very, very fascinated on the what was it about people that believed it or didn't believe it. I was very curious. I don't know what the answer is.
So going back to what you just said, right, which is like you did some work. You did some work for you. You decided this is what I believe, and that's how I'm going to go forward. Right? That's what you're saying. It's the simplest way I could put it in the most respectful way. I made my decision. I'm going to live my life this way. I think that group of people isn't right. I think I'm right according to my information. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that being said, now why then try to shove that message into the atmosphere through the efforts that you guys have taken over the past couple of years? Why then upset human beings over the fact that you personally have all arrived at this decision according to your, because you said a few things earlier that I found really profoundly cool, right? That are in contrast to this, which is, I don't care if you get vaccinated, do your thing. Wouldn't that time be spent now, in my estimation, because like you're in this place in your life which has been negatively affected by your belief system. You don't think this is happening. You continue to get dinged. It's other people's faults. But haven't you acted on that information? And what are the chances? Like, what if all the information you have to turn it around is wrong? And in 5 years from now, you go, holy fuck, I got sold by bill of goods by a couple of shitty doctors. And I believe this thing and I shouldn't have believed it. And I let because that's how I look at it. It's like, there are a lot of people out there who think this has happened to them. They've fought, they have upset the fruit basket. They've visited harm on other people because they don't want to. And basically, if you ask me, held certain people hostage because you don't want to get vaccinated because you've done your own work and you don't agree with the majority of doctors. Does that not sound weird?
Well, here's the issue though, right? If this is supposed to be a vaccine, what difference does it make if I get it or not?
Yeah, but does it not, as I've explained it, does that not sound weird to champion something like that, to lose as much as you did, and then to say you're still on the right track, or were you hardened by this process?
No, I don't think it hardened me per se, because from the very beginning of this, I, for the most part, looked at this at a very dispassionate legal point of view. I looked at a lot of the science and stuff like that, and what I could piece together that made sense. And yes, I will absolutely acknowledge that there was many times in the early days, it's like, am I going down the wrong path? Should I be listening to, am I going in the wrong direction with this?
Do you wonder that today because of the quality of life?
Not at all.
You don't?
Not at all. Not even remotely today.
Wow.
But in the early days, I viewed it as really a human right and a legal perspective. It's how I really honestly looked at it. Because I from my point of view, I said, we have laws that exist in this country to protect the individual citizen from this exact very scenario that we're in. We actually have pandemic response plans. EMO has them. The military has one. It's called Op Laser. We have plans for all of this stuff. And yet all of those things were just swept aside. The rule of law in this country was swept aside because some politician said, I'm just doing it. I'm going to do it to you. I'm going to impose my will on you in a so-called free and democratic society that actually has laws already that surrounds.
Isn't that what the convoy was, though?
What do you mean?
Imposing on people.
It was a direct appeal.
But it's an imposition, massive imposition.
Oh, of course it was an imposition to the government of Canada, because the government of Canada felt like for 2.5 years they could impose their will on us.
Tom? Like, you can't see how it was an imposition for millions of people. You can't see, or a million people in that city. You can't see people that live in the core, people that operate in the core.
No.
Paul, Marianne, Jim, Tom, Sue, Sally.
Hey, if you lived around,
you don't think you impose those people? You don't think? No.
No, because you know what? If the government decided to impose their will on all the truckers and all those goods stop going across the border, then Paul and Mary are going to be pissing and moaning all year long because they don't have any supplies or any food or anything. How were truckers supposed to make a living when they were told
they were not about truckers? They were not about truckers. You know that. You and I both know that. This wasn't a trucker rally. This was a co-opted group of people that decided that they were going to line up behind the trucker mandates. Let me explain my theory. Okay, let me get through that. That decided they were going to co-opt the trucker movement. You have people like, and dude, we can get into the GoFundMe money and where that is and who contributed to that if you want.
I know the answer to that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'd love to hear it. But like, and I'd love to hear your take on it. But you're talking about imposing your will on a group of people because you don't want to take a shot. Great. I get it. We're going to impose our will on the people of Ottawa. We're going to impose our will on the border down in Windsor. We're going to impose our will in Coutts. We're going to impose our will in Sarnia. And we're going to prevent goods and services from getting across the border. Now, your original discussion and argument was that truckers couldn't feed people. The supply line would be bad. But that fucked up the supply line and cost this country billions of dollars and literally cost logistics, truckers, people that work in warehouses, their jobs, their livelihoods. And that's the imposition I'm talking about. Do you not find that to be unfair?
No, because I find that to be very inaccurate because of what the facts actually are. And I can tell you, after the fact that I left Ottawa, we were gone. One of my close friends, he's also a veteran, was actually in Windsor, and he looked me in the eye and he guaranteed that at all times in Windsor, there was a lane open on the bridge in Windsor. So the media characterizing it that they shut down the Windsor Bridge is complete lies. They didn't. They literally, I can tell you, I can point to
the president of the United States at the time, Biden, he was lying about telling them to open the border.
Because I didn't see Joe Biden or Justin Trudeau go to Windsor and look for themselves. What they got filtered was through their staff that had like a narrative that was put out there, right?
We had people
but I can tell you,
they said a lane was open and it was moving at a snail's pace, and
probably a snail's pace,
because of that. They had a really hard time delivering goods to and from Canada.
I've crossed the border into the United States from Niagara Falls, and it's at a snail's pace because the Americans take cross-border stuff seriously when we don't.
Yeah, but that's different though, Tom. And you listen, shutting down the border, international crossings to prove a point, that was uncool and it was un-Canadian, and it hurt people. Like, I go back to that all the time, Tom. It's like, I will never be on side with hurting another person to prove your point.
6 million Canadians cannot get on an aircraft and fly domestically.
Because they made a decision. They made a decision not to get vaccinated.
Okay, but does the vaccine actually do what a vaccine's supposed to do? Does it stop you from it doesn't stop me from getting it from you. If you've got COVID, if I have COVID,
it means you'll get worse. COVID.
It does not. If I have COVID and you come near me vaccinated, you can still get COVID from me.
Yeah, totally.
Then it's not a vaccine.
Twice as
a vaccine.
No. Vaccine. Yeah. Every vaccine in the world does not prevent you from getting something. The vaccines in this world prevent you from dying of something, prevent you from having very serious allergic reactions to it, prevent you from having longer COVID, prevent you from, yes, they do. Yes, they do. It is proven time and time and time again. And it's been proven in these, as you call them, experimental studies, and they wouldn't be jamming them in people if they thought that it was a fucking joke, and then they thought it was just some kind of sewage toxic mess in a fucking needle. Like, they
last year they updated the definition of what a vaccine is to suit the COVID-19 definition of a vaccine. Prior to that, it was meant to stop. Where does herd immunity come from? Was the fact that they wanted to extinguish a pathogen or a virus from a public sphere, right? It literally, they changed the CDC last summer, changed the definition of what a vaccine is to suit.
No one cares about the CDC. No one cares about the World Health Organization.
Well,
the only thing that I care about is like,
yeah.
we're in Canada. We're talking about what happened. We're talking about a difference of opinion. We're talking about what you think. And what you think is very opposite to what I think. And what I think is vaccines are very important, saved a lot of lives. They're really a modern miracle. You think the fix is in. Vaccines don't really do anything. But I fully understand, like, my eyes were wide awake when I got vaccinated, that I'm probably still going to get COVID, and it's not going to make a whole lot of difference when it comes to transmission. Viral load might be a little less, but at the very least, I'm offering myself a level of protection for the people around me and myself if indeed I do get sick.
So I never, let's just say for argument's sake, I didn't have COVID, or maybe I did have COVID. Maybe I had Omicron, right? I was sick almost the entire time I was in Ottawa. I somehow miraculously, I don't think so, because I didn't take it till after, right? But I definitely didn't have worms. But here's the issue.
You don't now.
I don't now. I didn't then. But here's the issue. I survived it, and I still was able to perfectly function just like I have for the rest of my life.
Different. But everyone's different. That can't be an example that we use ourselves. Can't be an example we use for everybody else, right?
But you're like the team that you're on, did you confirm that all of them have polio shots and their MMR? Like, are your staff all updated on all their other vaccines? Well,
no, I don't care if any of our people are vaccinated or not. Never did.
Right. But you didn't take away their job. You didn't threaten their livelihood to actually pay their mortgage.
No.
You didn't tell them that, hey, in the province of Quebec, you ain't going into a grocery store.
No, because I don't care. Because this is about me. This is about my decision for the quality of life and this experience that I have, right, Tom? Like, I've got people that I work with that I have to sit and understand and listen to. Two of our people are unvaccinated. One because they chose not to be, the other one because they can't be. And I sat and listened to them. And one person that medically has a reason to not be vaccinated said to me, I hope this doesn't affect my job here. And that's when I knew I was doing this wrong, right? That's when I knew I was visiting my opinion on people and it was unfair. And that's when I knew, fuck, you know what? I can't make people that are human beings live in fear of my opinion of their life. And people lived in fear of your opinion of what you didn't want in your life for a long period of time. And they're still doing it. And so my point is there not enough of an opportunity here for all of us to say, you know what? I've decided what's best for me. I'm not going to be an activist against another human being. I'm going to allow them the ability for them to believe what they believe. But is there not like some part of you that's like, I shouldn't have gone to Ottawa like that, and fuck, I wonder how much better my life would be as a result of just saying that this is how I'm going to live my life. And I'm not going to go and do something that is going to legitimately circumcise my life. Like, is there any regret?
I agree with the first part of what you said. Let people do what they feel is right for their own self. That's why we have the laws about informed consent, which we didn't talk about. That is the whole point, where we said you can't meet the basic threshold of informed consent. And until they can, if they could meet the threshold of informed consent, I think they probably would have got more people to get vaccinated, but they can't meet that basic threshold of informed consent. So that's why people said, until you can meet that threshold, I ain't touching that shit. So for me, it's a legal issue because we have laws that are meant to protect us as individuals in this country, right? And until you could basically meet all the checks and balances and laws that are meant to protect us from, listen, doctors all the time get charged for crimes. Do we say that all doctors are bad? No. The vast majority of doctors are good. But, we can't paint everybody on the same brush. We have laws to protect the individuals and not paint everybody with one big broad brush. So from my point of view, if the government would have said, hey, you can choose not to get vaccinated, that's fine. Or you can make the choice to do it, that's fine. But don't threaten me with coercion. Don't threaten me, my job, my travel. Don't try to humiliate my children in a classroom. Don't bully people. Don't do all these awful things, because we're making a choice that we are legally protected to make. And that's the problem with this. If you guys want to do it, do it. Just do it. But I'm never going to come at you. I'm never going to lobby. I'm never going to go to Ottawa and say, you know what? Dean got vaccinated, and I think he should be kicked out of society. I think he shouldn't be allowed to have groceries. I think he shouldn't be allowed to get on me beside me on a plane or a train or a boat. I don't think he should have the same rights as me because he made a choice to go and partake in something that I think was fundamentally wrong. And now, if you're wrong and you do get sick in the next couple of years, and I don't, now I have to pay through my tax dollars your tax burden on me, on my system, right?
That's
another.
That's what everybody's been saying about anybody who's not vaccinated. It's the
or
same
smokers
thing,
or drinkers.
Totally,
yeah,
by
but
the way,
we never said
no.
We never said shit about drinkers or smokers this whole time. But we said no.
Drink?
Sometimes, yeah, beer, mostly non-alcoholic beer or wine. I just don't like.
More common ground. I don't mind a non-alcoholic beer myself.
Yeah, but that's the thing. So we meet in the middle on this, Dean. The issue for us is that what is
the middle for you and me? Like, let's just as a microcosm, because you think I'm crazy. I think you're crazy. No. We're having a conversation. What's the middle? Like, if you could draw a solution, if you could leave your entire belief system behind and said, okay, we got to figure something out. We need to get into the middle. What is the middle for you?
The middle is if you choose to get vaccinated and go about your life, you do it. If I choose not to, I go about my life and I do that, and everybody's happy. I think that's the middle ground.
Me too. I've got no problem with that. That's but the impetus for our conversation was you and your friends doing the exact opposite of that, and we had nothing to do with it. Because here's the thing, every single one of us is going through the exact same thing you're going through. It's happening to us at the same time it's happening to you, and we had the ability to sack up and make the decision. And so when it's not something that you want for your life, you made a bunch of other people pay for it. And if what you're saying is true, if the middle is what you're saying is true and you believe that, the middle is live and let live. Dean, I'm really, because I appreciate this. I enjoy this.
Me too.
I think you're a human being. Like, we're all human beings. And so if that's really what you believe, and you and I are capable of reaching out and saying, sorry for being a dick, isn't the middle then putting that stuff down and saying, because I believe what you're saying is true. I think you're right. I think you're 100% right, Tom. I think if you and I can have the ability to have a discourse, and if we can sit here and go, what is the middle? Because I agree with you. The middle is Tom goes about his business. Dean goes about his business. When they see each other, there's a mutual respect, although they don't agree, and they might have a feeling about what that person is all about and what went into that. They still can treat each other well. Shouldn't, if that's the case, don't we want to put all that shit down and say, okay, enough. I'm going to live my life. We're going to go get jobs, real jobs, working on a shrimp boat. We're going to go, we're going to make our lives better. We're heal relationships in our families. We're going to say goodbye to thinking that is neither factual nor relevant in the lives of someone who doesn't believe you, right? It doesn't matter. If that's the case, isn't that a better way of, if we're going to move into the middle? And I agree with you. Shouldn't we start acting like that?
I totally agree with you. I 100% agree with you. And I want to go back to an earlier point. The Ottawa convoy was 3.5 weeks long, right? For a small group of people that lived around Wellington in that core of a population of 1 million. But we had the leader of this country and all of the mainstream media vilifying unvaccinated people before the convoy even happened. But when the convoy happened, then he really ramped up the rhetoric. The mainstream media went ballistic and jumped right on board that.
Well, when Trudeau called y'all fringe
minorities.
He's a dick. By the way, I fucking hate the guy. I think he's the weakest leader. I think he's only been a real prime minister for the past year. Like, I think he's turned it up and actually done a good job in the past year. So, like, again, common ground. So everybody that's like, you're a big Trudeau bag licker. Let me just say this. But I'm the guy that wrote the article that says he's a national embarrassment. So I'm on side.
So the other thing is this, like, for all of this time, since the vaccines came out, he was saying that the truckers were heroes before the vaccine came out. And as soon as the vaccine came out, and some of the truckers said, I don't think so. Then all of a sudden they're now zeros. They went from heroes to zeros because they didn't want to do what he wanted them to do. And so the media jumped on board, every level of government jumped on board, our friends and families jumped on board, and everyone did exactly, everybody did exactly what the opposite of what you just said that we should have done with each other. We should have respected each other. We should have had respectful discourse, conversations, really look at the science. But we were prevented, everybody, your side, my side, everybody was it was denied an alternative opinion about this. They were only interested in jamming down one side of the story right down everyone's throat. And
but
that's
the alternative opinion, according to science, in the science that I follow, that alternative opinion was bunk.
Yeah, but if you can't question science, then it's not science. That's the problem. No,
what if it's,
no.
Okay, good.
It's not. It's good. But if you can't question science, then it's not science. It's purely dogma.
I think scientists this is just me. I think scientists can question science. I don't think Johnny 269 on Twitter that operates an auto parts store in Southern Ontario can question science unless he legitimately says, I don't know anything about this. Why don't you explain it to me? That's starting point for everybody. And I saw a lot of that. Right. I saw a lot of those people that don't have a great education. Everybody became overnight scientists, according to Facebook memes and different conversations they had. And would you agree? Because I think this is the same for both sides. We look for information that confirms our bias. We don't look for information that challenges our belief system. And so
confirmation bias is real.
Yeah. Do you think that that's part of us getting better individually is saying, because I've had to do that. I think everybody should step outside your belief system and say, okay, I'm going to pretend like I don't have an opinion on any of this. Let's go through all of it with different people that understand stuff. Is that something that you think everybody should be doing as well?
Yes, I think you have to be aware of confirmation bias. You have to be very careful about getting inside an echo chamber of your own BS. You have to do that. But here's one challenge to this entire thing. This side of the argument was denied a legitimate opportunity to hear the opposing arguments of the science. So what happened is it created this vacuum where people that were only given one side of the story had to go look for alternate sources of information on different platforms. We were only ever force-fed in the mainstream media from government one side of the story. We were denied it. So people started, like, it was rats on the ship looking for alternate information because they didn't believe what was going on. So that created fertile ground.
That a problem?
I find it a huge problem. I think it's a terrible problem because we should have had both sides.
When everybody is saying the same thing, like everybody around the world is saying the same thing, and people are like, you know what? I don't believe any of it now. Let's go look for other stuff. Do you not find that a problem?
I think that's a confidence of our government. I think it's people's faith in the government, whether they have lost.
But isn't that your bias? And again, just a question: isn't that your bias creeping into it? Because, you don't. Isn't that what this is? Isn't that your bias kind of creeping into, because you don't trust the government? I'm talking about literally opening up our minds to multitudes of different information.
No, so what I'm saying is I was force-fed to listen to the government's information, but I didn't think that information was making sense to me. So I started to look for different sources of information. And when you put two and two together, you have to make an informed decision. And that's
but you're getting that information from the government, you're getting that information from mainstream media, you're getting that information on Twitter, you're getting it. And so none of that appeased you, is what you're saying. And so you had to go look for other. Do you not find that to be a problem, that everybody was saying the same thing and you're like, I don't believe any of it?
Yeah, I find that to be more in line with what a proper scientific method should be, is you make a hypothesis. And that's what the process is. You make a hypothesis and you prove or disprove a hypothesis. And so when I was listening to things, I would consider it. I'd think really hard about it and say, there's a piece of this that doesn't make sense to me, and I'm actually going to go somewhere else and see if I can find more information. Now, I don't like rabbit holes. I'll tell you right now, I can't stand rabbit holes. What I prefer is
You're focus in the wrong crowd, then, bud.
I know. I focus on what I can control and what I can influence, and I don't care about other stuff outside of that. And so, for me, I'm a fiercely logical person. This is what I aspire to. Not on a Vulcan level, but pretty darn close. I like the world to make sense to me, but I'm very open-minded to both sides. Like, a lot of people think that I'm a very rigid person that don't understand or don't know who I am or what I'm talking about. But, because I get a phenomenal amount of support from people on my side of the aisle. Mm-hmm. And I get a massive amount of hate on the other side as well. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because you have been one of the most respectful people on this entire chat. And I'm casually looking at all the comments, and all I'm getting here,
look at it, dude. You don't have to look at them. I don't look at the comments like ever.
But here, if I look at some of the stuff, right, what I'm not getting from people in this, and this is an important point, because you offered to do the podcast. I was very happy to accept to do it. We're doing this the right way. This is what respectful discourse is. But yet a lot of the people in there are they're not actually basing it on anything but emotion. They're just emotion, like the vitriol shit that have called me.
Some of them are from Ottawa. Some of them are still pretty pissed off at you.
Yeah, but you know what? You want to know? I want to tell all of the viewers about a guy named Chris Deering.
Chris Sky?
Chris Deering. Chris Deering is a friend of mine.
Can we talk about Chris Sky and Ramona Dadula before we go?
Okay. Ramon. Oh man. Oh. Yeah,
she's with you, isn't she? She's with you, Tom.
No. She is in her own category. She gets a special call. Yeah. She gets a special call. So let me talk about Chris Deering. Chris Deering was a young man who joined the military, went to Afghanistan in his very early 20s. His LAV-3 ran over an IED, sent his LAV-3 100 feet into the air, killing 2 of the other soldiers in the vehicle with him. It flipped over. The turret fell out. Chris fell out. The vehicle itself hit the ground. Luckily, nothing landed on top of Chris. Mm-hmm. He goes to Ottawa on those last 2 days. He's standing at the National War Memorial with his medals on, and it's clear that he's a veteran. He was almost killed. He was badly injured. Broken pelvis, broken cheekbone, everything. And yet, when he was in Ottawa, they invoked the Emergency Act and the police got a hold of him and kicked the living shit out of him. Then they arrested him. Then they drove him out 20 kilometers into the middle of a field and in the country in the winter, kicked him out of the car and said, goodbye. This is what the Ottawa police did to several people that was deemed to be a legal protest by a judge. This is what we did to veterans at the National War Memorial. You can see all the video. It's all out there. They were butt stroking veterans, taking veterans to the ground with their medals and berets on. This is how we treated the cops in Ottawa, treated veterans in this country. Why? Because of parking violations that they always had from day one, the legal authority and mechanisms to deal with. Yeah. This was about parking violations, 3 levels of emergencies for parking violations. And by the way, you could have driven an ambulance right down Wellington if you wanted to as well. Mm-hmm. And for
listen, what? And I'll tell you something. There are lots of stories that came out of Ottawa that I don't have confirmation for, where the police absolutely were untoward. Right. Yeah. Whether it was poor planning, whether it was planning with you guys, whatever the situation was.
So Shelley gets a special mention at the end here because she hasn't come back at me with one intelligent thing, one comment that is anything other than emotional.
A swear.
Like it's just like,
dude, people are mad. Like you are.
I get they're mad.
Well, hold it though. Like, do you know that? Like, do you really like? I know you want to move on with your life, which is what I'm trying to fit. I'm trying to ascertain here because you and I are having a conversation. We are being respectful to each other. We're talking. I mean, you're taking it out of the arena of your experience, but we don't want to do that. We don't want to talk about vaccines. What I want to talk about is like, do you understand? That people have a legitimate reason to be upset with the convoy and the people who helped organize it, or do you not understand that?
So
that's
after
almost
for 2.5 years, I think this country is phenomenally angry, excessively angry. But what I don't understand on both sides of the aisle, both sides.
No, but do you understand why these people are mad at you in the comments section? First of all, they're all listeners of ours, so of course they're going to be biased. But
yeah, but here's the thing. I think personally, truthfully, this is what I absolutely believe. Their anger and their hatred are completely misplaced. All of this vitriol hate should not be towards us. It shouldn't be towards you. It should be to the government of Canada, the government of Ontario, every municipal government that imposed all this BS on people that they never had to do. They never had to do this.
They hate the government
too.
I mean,
why do we allow a guy like Justin Trudeau?
Because you guys, but hold it, because you guys did that. You guys went there. You guys caused a major problem for individuals trying to live their lives.
For a handful of people. But what about the other ones?
They matter.
A year prior to, what about the problems it caused?
You matter too.
The 6 million people on our side, the 6 million
You matter
people,
too. You matter too. Dude,
I agree.
And that's what I'm getting at is that you can't have it both ways, right?
No,
hurting people is hurting people.
Yeah.
When Trudeau went on his tangent, and here's the thing, and you want to know why I can't stand this guy, and I'll get into it real quick.
Yeah.
He absolutely used a deadly pandemic to call an election, and leverage that pandemic pre-vaccine to get more power, more seats, and still be able to fucking do whatever it is he and his great hair wanted to do. At the time when we were the sickest, we were the most tired, he said, go to the polls because I want more power. Now, if you want to piss me off, do that. If anybody wants to piss anybody off, do that. Leverage a sick society of people who are so fucking tired of everything, all of it, every piece of it. Sick and tired of your group, sick and tired of that group, sick and tired of fucking being sick and tired. And so when you say he's not listening to people and you decide you want to take it out on everybody else, we are going through it too, Tom.
I agree. And which is why when we were there, we constantly met with the police and we had a few meetings with the city and we said, look, we want to work with you. We don't want to disrupt the lives of the citizens of Ottawa. Our beef is with Trudeau.
You did. But you did. That's exactly what you did. You settle your beef with Trudeau at the polls. You don't settle your beef with Trudeau by making people fucking miserably frightened for fucking months.
But Trudeau did not get a majority government. But what he did is he made this unholy drug deal with Jagmeet Singh and got his unofficial majority government through this guy who wanted a dental plan.
Everybody gets new teeth.
New teeth,
whatever.
Right?
I mean, that's all bullshit too. But that's what I'm not talking about. That is cause and effect. Like you have a choice to make every single time you decide to make a choice, right? When you decide you want to say something, you say something. You know it's going to cause reverberations because you're you now. You've created this persona, and this persona is someone that is very passionate about. Like, and this is the thing why one of the reasons why I'm enjoying this. You're incredibly passionate about what you believe.
Yeah.
You're incredibly passionate. You're sticking up for your community. There's something cool about anybody that sticks up for their community. What I'm trying to tell you is your community decided to take the fight to a whole bunch of Canadians who are sick and tired, and you don't seem to, at least you don't seem to acknowledge it.
I don't, because we were actually fighting for those people that hated us too. Every soldier knows that.
You can't fight for people that don't believe in the things you believe in. That's like me saying, hey, listen, a Muslim guy down the street, I'm going to fight for your ability to eat pork. Because I really believe you should eat pork.
No, I know, but here's the challenge, though, that this is one particular issue that we, as a public, we relent to these kind of illegal mandates and these things that the governments have done to us for this particular issue. But what happens, Dean, if someday in the future there's an issue that you and people that support you don't like, right? This is where you're going to look back and say, well, shit, you know what?
I accept it, or I decide I'm going to speak my piece and let the chips fall where they may. What I don't do,
and we were speaking ours after.
You have, dude. My timeline
after 2 years.
Do you know how many death threats I got in January and February? 1,300.
Yeah,
1,300. From your people who were mad that I was saying, get the fuck out of Ottawa. You're hurting others. We're going to kill you, Dean. Dude, I'm sure you saw my tweets. I'm sure you were aware of who I was.
I get it all the time too. I get all the hate. Listen, Antifa is my favorite though. I get all sorts of stuff. I have no concerns about Canadian Antifa. Yeah, they don't bother me at all, and none of our V4F members. Like, we laugh at them. We think they're ridiculous. But here's a question, right? If you look at all of the doctors and all the nurses that said, hey, I'm not taking that thing, and they lost their jobs. You know, the vast majority of the people in the medical industry were the nurses who actually have to look after COVID patients and have to look after injured people And you know what kind of injury I'm talking about, but I'm not going to get you a deplatform. But if those people came out and said, wait a minute, you're telling me that you don't want to become one of those patients that you're treating, and you'd rather give up your job than to become one of the patients in your bed?
That's not accurate.
Okay. It is. I know them all. I know these nurses.
You know some.
I know the nurses.
You know how many women left? The percentage of women who left, nurses, not women. Pardon me, that was sexist. How many nurses left the field because they didn't want to get the jab? It was less than 1%, less than 0.1%. It was less than 0.1%.
Yeah.
And less than 0.1% of individuals decided, because in the medical field, I don't know if you I'm sure you're familiar with this, is that you've got a set of agreements, much like you in the military, where you got to take a whole bunch of different vaccines. And it is almost like professional development updating those vaccine flights. Now, we haven't had to update vaccine flights in quite some time. And when you're in the nursing profession, you take it's the Hippocratic Oath, as you know, do no harm. If you walk in there with COVID and you get somebody sick because you don't want to get the vaccine, which is, now we're getting into a whole other area of conversation, which is like liability and all the other bullshit, then that's fine. I get it. But it's part of your job as a nurse, like it was when you were a military guy and you were taken advantage of in that regard, because military is different than healthcare. Healthcare is about not doing any harm to the people that you're actually working with and working for. Military is like, fuck, you're going to go to Somalia and live in a hole and take a shit in your pants for a month. You're going to have to take this. So it's very different. You can't port those two examples into the same thing. And the healthcare system was on life support prior to this. So breathing any information into this and saying, hey, listen, vaccines and vaccine injuries, which I think are just fucking wild, that we have these conversations. But these things are all part and parcel. There's different pieces that go into it. But to say that nurses, this is mathematics, this is fucking fact, say that we have a nursing shortage, or that nurses have had an issue with the vaccine, which is hurting the healthcare industry, is because they didn't want to have vaccine injuries and didn't want to. Those nurses, one of two things has gone on with them. A, they're petrified of the unknown, or B, they've got a religious reason, or C, they're also incredibly selfish. Those are the only three reasons.
So the way I look at it with them, because there's an organization called Frontline Nurses that in the very beginning of this said, hell no, we're not doing this until you complete the clinical trials. And I know you don't like that, but that's what their perspective is. So these nurses that have lost their jobs, I mean, that would be, for me, I'd be like, well, wait a minute. If every single doctor said, yeah, this is safe and effective, and actually meant it, but what we're seeing is, like, because I have a really good friend of mine who's a doctor, and he said, hell no. And he got fired, right? So a lot of the doctors and nurses that are out there that lost their jobs, if the very fact that they spent their entire adult lives becoming nurses and loved their job and did all this stuff, if they're saying, I am not rolling the dice with that thing at all because of what I'm personally seeing, right? And this is the thing, the evidence of the doctors that are, or the nurses. So this is one more thing, and I said this months ago when I was in Ottawa, is that a lot of people, and I've spoken to tons of vaccinated people that have said to me, I got the vaccine to keep my job. They didn't take the vaccine because they were worried about COVID. They were coerced into it. And you know who told me this? A whole bunch of RCMP officers, like 6 months before I got involved in the Convoy, that were joining a class action lawsuit against the federal government, because they were like, you're telling me that I'm a federal police officer, and you're now telling me that in order to keep my job, I have to go and do this. That's coercion. That's literally against the law. That violates informed consent. So here's the thing.
They don't understand science then.
But you have to balance the law between the science in this particular case, because the science right now, we don't know what the actual science is, because we're being prevented on this side of the argument from hearing the entire picture. We're totally stifling any scientific debate open to the public.
You go back to law. So you said it has to be law and science.
Yes, in this particular case.
And then that I actually would agree with you. That I would agree is that you begun, and to me the law is clear, specifically during a time like we've just gone through, is that they can fuck with the law. To keep marginalized people safe, people with comorbidities. They can fuck with the law to do that. And you know what? I'm of the opinion, this is my personal belief system again. I'm of the opinion that if you got to rejig the law, and you need to take a hard line during a global pandemic to keep people who are otherwise going to be in trouble safer, then you should do it. Now, that's, again, part of the thing that both you and I, that's going to be a disconnect because you don't agree with that.
Right, because I look at it and I say, well, there are people out there. There are people out there that had legitimate, and you said one of your staff has a legitimate medical reason for a vaccine exemption,
Chris,
but yet his doctor from the CPSO he probably had a hard time finding a doctor to even write that exemption because the CPSO started targeting doctors that were issuing, not all, but a lot of doctors were targeted for issuing exemptions based on
some of them were issuing the bogus ones too, right, Tommy? Like some of
I wouldn't be surprised at all. I wouldn't be surprised, and I would never go after one of those. I just wouldn't do it.
And you'd never have a doctor that faked a prescription for you so you could get out of duty, right? Nobody would.
No. I mean,
you're crazy if you do that.
I could have probably gotten a vaccine passport if I wanted one, but I wouldn't do it because I'm not going to actually come out and fight against something and be a hypocrite and actually not stand on my word and not actually fight for what I believe and put my goddamn name on it. And that's another thing, is no matter what people say or dislike against me, I put my name on everything I do. I don't hide from it. I don't run away from it because this is what I believe, and I'm willing to stand there and actually do what you and I are doing and have a great discussion about this.
Where a lot of people
no. I don't know. A lot of people were concerned that this was not going to be the way advertised, but I actually thought it was going to go exactly like it is, and I'm happy to see it is. What I did expect was for the comments, right? Listen, I don't care if people that I don't know don't like me. I only care when people that I know and respect and I really like are mad at me. But when I don't know you, I don't really care. I'll sleep great tonight.
I'm actually gonna painfully evident because of what happened in Ottawa. You don't really care. So like I get it.
Well,
it feeds into a lot of the overall narrative here, right?
But 6 million Canadians in this country were also equally imposed by the government because of a choice that they wanted and legally were protected to make. But the government, like you said, ignored it and just screwed with the law. So what about the 6 million people in this country that were locked down, lost jobs, couldn't go to restaurants, couldn't participate in society? No, what you do is like you and I say, you go about your day, I go about my day, and the rest of it is
do your thing.
Do your thing, do your thing, right? And so when that was taken away from 6 million Canadians, where was the outrage from all those people that lived in the Ottawa corridor? It wasn't happening to them. They had no skin in the game. So they were perfectly happy to listen to Justin Trudeau vilify people like me and my kids.
Yeah, because they got vaccinated. They're like, fuck, I get it. I'll get vaccinated. I'll move on.
They didn't care about my rights as a Canadian citizen. They didn't give
No, they did. And I'll tell you this, is that, hold it.
Well, does what's his face? Where is he? He's in here.
You really do care about the comments section.
No, I just find it interesting.
You do. Yeah.
I find it interesting, like, because I'm waiting for Frank and a couple of the others to actually come up with something logical that isn't just profanity, insults in sandbox level, kind of eat your crayons and sniff your glue. Come up and say something that I can engage with. Dean did that.
Frank did. Frank just did. Frank just said, so admitting to holding Ottawa citizens hostage.
No, the Ottawa citizens could go and come and go as they please. They could go to work. We tried to actually get the government, the Ottawa the mayor. We tried to get them to open up the businesses because they put the emergency order to close down all those businesses. We didn't. We wanted it open. We told them to open it up.
We actually the Nazi flags and stuff.
I thought it was disgusting. I thought it is deplorable. And there was only one evidence of one Nazi flag. And guess who? And that was, I think that was a setup. I don't think that was real. The Confederate flags had nothing to do with us. In fact, there is a photo of a guy wearing a hoodie, a mask, wearing a Confederate flag, and a bunch of truckers calling him out, saying, "What the hell are you doing? You're causing BS for us," right? There was one instance.
Yeah, I think I saw that actually. So some
there's
dude
one
walking
instance.
through with the "Don't tread on me" thing and a Confederate flag and a couple of guys
that had
like,
nothing
"Oh,
to
fuck
do
yourself."
with us. That had nothing to do with us. I personally, a lot of us don't like the F Trudeau flags. I don't like it. I think it's counterproductive. I think it's stupid. It doesn't make any sense to be doing that stuff, and it certainly diminishes your credibility. And a lot of us said that when we were in Ottawa. Stop waving that flag. It doesn't help, right? But you know, when you're out there cleaning the sidewalks so people can walk by, when you're doing garbage collection to make it easier for the garbage trucks, we put it in a central garbage collection point because we knew the trucks were blocking certain areas. We put it where it was accessible. You know, we weren't crapping in the streets and all that stuff that people were saying.
Well,
we
that's
were
not
actually
true
leaving.
because Karima saw a dude take a shit right next to the
Karima,
a huge shit.
Yeah, I don't understand Karima.
She's the best.
She's
awesome. I love her to death. She captures everything.
She came to one of my rallies when I was running for the Ontario election, and she showed up, and people on my team were going crazy. And I said, no. Let's just go over and talk to her. Let's just go talk to her. I walked over. I talked to her. Within 30 seconds, I caught her in a lie, but she was tame. Her and her boyfriend didn't care. They were tame. Didn't do a thing. All I did was go over and talk to her.
I've never known her to lie. What did she lie about?
She said that she had already gone through our party platform and knew everything there was to know about me, the party, and everyone. And then 30 seconds later said, "Oh, you're New Blue, right?" I said, "You're at the wrong rally, man. You got the wrong guy, the wrong candidate." And here, take one of my pamphlets.
Party?
Ontario
Were you
party,
Ontario party? Yeah. With Derek Sloan?
Yep.
Yeah, he's
Derek.
interesting too.
He
dude,
is.
there are, just so you know, the fact that we're talking, it doesn't mean I'm not going to still go after certain cats. I'm still going to be me. I'm sure you're going to be you. Like, it was funny because you and I put the swords down and we're like, well, let's have a fucking conversation about the craziness. And 2 minutes after that, I tweeted something about Jamie Saleh and Theo Fleury. I'm like, Theo Fleury's still in play. And you're like, I like Theo. He's a great guy. But,
I had coffee with him three weeks ago. And I know Jamie personally.
Can you explain this to me, what she's talking about? Jamie put out a tweet, you know her personally. I thought this was hilarious. It's called vague fear booking. Nothing talking about fear. Nothing can stop what's coming when you know you know.
Yeah.
What do you know what's coming, or
I can't,
something we should be aware of?
I can't speak specifically to that, but there's a couple of areas that I would probably hazard a guess on what she means about that. I would guess that, you know, there's a lot of anxiety out there that, because Justin Trudeau has been going around saying, "Hey, if you guys don't get your boosters, I'm really willing and ready to start taking drastic measures again and locking you guys down." So, you know, him being the donkey that he is, he can't actually lead or persuade. What he does is he threatens and calls people names, just like your buddy there, Shelley. So he can't actually articulate any logic or reason. He just attacks, right?
So what does that have to do with Jamie's tweet about
nothing can stop what's coming? I'm not sure specifically, but she's probably referring to that. She could be referring to the truth coming out once the public inquiry happens in October about what was actually transpired in Ottawa. She also could be talking about the fact that Justin Trudeau wants to go after all these carbon not the carbon emissions, the 30% reductions, and actually start going after the farmers in Canada, like just the same thing that's happening in the Netherlands. Because he's,
that's optional in Canada, right? You know that farming fertilizer thing is an optional thing.
Yeah, I'm not 100% up to the speed on that. I've got my hands full with this other stuff. I'm focused on the public inquiry, but I'm sure I'll get involved in that in the future.
Don't do it, dude. Don't do it. You don't need to get over involved in all this stuff anymore. Like you're saying, hey, you want to be able to walk away and live a peaceful life. Yeah. Start shedding some of these causes. It's probably a good idea. I think we all should.
I'm with you. I am getting exhausted with it, but it's not over yet. And that's the problem for me. Like I think masks from day one were stunningly ridiculous. I viewed masks as nothing but a virtue signaling measure of compliance. It was an indication to get you and you and you and you to. It was like everyone swore their allegiance to what was going on. Nobody questioned.
I didn't. So okay, you and I've had a 3 hour and 17-minute conversation, and we're still going strong.
Yeah.
I never looked at that once. I looked at it like, fuck, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get a mask. There's, again, broad brush, right? Not, you can't put everybody in, just like I can't say everybody associated with you is a Nazi. You can't
But
say everybody that wore a mask is virtue signaling.
The thing with me is I've trained, like I've literally spent days in top high, like full CBRN suit, respirator, charcoal suit, gloves, boots, everything with a weapon, living in an environment that could possibly have a contagion. Now that didn't, I mean, I'm talking training. You have to learn. People in the military learn how to take a dump wearing a full chemical warfare suit.
How do you do
There's
that?
drills.
Do you just shit your pants?
No, you actually have to. Yeah, it's.
Is there a
horrible.
hatch? Is there a hatch in the back?
No, you got to unzip and cover yourself with all this jelly and all this powder and all this. It's horrendous. I mean, I'm trained in all this CBRN stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So when I looked
did you
at
have
masks,
the freedom? But did you have the freedom, like when they were gearing you up and wearing all this shit and filling you with stuff? Did you have the freedom to go, you know what? I'm going to pass on this. I don't think I'm going to get sick.
No, you wouldn't. I mean, I'm not going to be doing that in a nerve agent, right? In a live agent, when I know that it's literally going to kill me within minutes, right? So I'm very well.
I don't believe in nerve agents.
Well, what happens is you're going to start doing the funky chicken, and then I'm going to know it's time for me to put my suit on. That's how it works.
All right.
That's literally how it works.
Okay.
So, I'm very well trained in all that stuff. Everybody in the military is trained in that. And you're telling me that this little tiny blue mask is going to actually stop this airborne thing? It doesn't work that way.
Oh, I do. Again, I don't disagree that it's not stopping anything. It's layers of protection. That's where, like, you've got me in this basket of people that are like, fucking masks and like, no, I don't care. I never cared. I cared before we had vaccines. When we got vaccines, I'm like, long conversations with epidemiologists, and I'll tell you a story real quick. Mario Alia, family doctor, great friend of mine. We have him on the show from time to time. He's been the voice of reason for me in this mess. You've got your super vaxxers, you got your super maskers, you got your anti-vaxxers, you got your anti-maskers, and then you got people in the middle going, fucking just give me the straight goods. And the straight goods are level of protection, doesn't protect you from getting it at all, doesn't protect you from giving it to others, but it does mitigate that risk, meaning, and you know what risk mitigation is from being in the Army, which that's where I'm at. So to make those blanket statements that this thing's useless, I don't think it's useless, and that's not where I'm coming at this from, that it's 100% useful, but it is useful in a layer of protection in the process.
So what was your thought? Because you're in Toronto, right? You're in Toronto. So what was your thought a couple of years ago when we had
you asking me questions now, Tommy?
Yeah,
what's going on?
Because I had I lived in Toronto a couple times, and what I always found really interesting is I lived in North York for a while, and there was a significant Asian population in Toronto that used to wear masks everywhere
all the time, still.
And but before COVID, they were all wearing masks, and I think a lot of people were like, why are you doing that? But I didn't see I never once saw Caucasian people walk in the streets wearing a face mask.
No, they were ahead of the curve. So the thing behind some of our Asian friends now, I live in a highly Asian population, right? And I both my neighbors, Asian, lovely people, and maybe the best neighbors on the planet, by the way. I think everybody keeps to themselves where I live, but we can see each other, very, very friendly, very kind. So really fortunate, love multiculturalism. And so I asked them right when we started wearing masks, one of my neighbors, I said, explain this whole mask thing to me. And he did. He did a marvelous job. About 100 years ago, Spanish flu, if you remember, there was another flu that went through there where everybody was mandated to wear masks all the time. And that's just a cultural thing. And it's generic. It's this generic kind of cultural thing in certain Asian countries where they're like, no, we wear masks because, and this is interesting, we don't want, especially if we're sick or we're feeling under the weather, our job is to not give it to other people. It's not about protecting themselves. It's about not giving it to others. And it worked. And it works. And so that is the theory behind those people that you speak of that were wearing masks back in the day, where everybody's like, why are they wearing masks? Well, because culturally speaking, from that area of the world, they suffered greatly through a series of pandemics that we're going through right now, which again, you don't believe in, but a series of pandemics that we've gone through, Spanish flu, et cetera, where the goal wasn't we don't want to get it. That wasn't the goal. It was the other way. It was like, we don't want to give it to anybody. So if we want to get out and about, this is a layer of protection for us to go to the market, go to the store, all those things. It happened in 1918 here in this very country, where you had, again, same theory, anti-maskers, anti-vaxxers, and literally half the world's population was affected by the Spanish flu in 1918. So there is, and I'm a history buff, as you are. There is history and culture. There are cultural reasons, not societal norms. Those are cultural reasons that they've been wearing them. And when I said to my neighbor, I'm like, fuck, you were ahead of the curve. You already had these things. He's like, I know. It's incredible.
So I suppose,
does that make sense?
It does. It does make it absolutely makes it makes sense to me. But I guess what I was trying to get at, and it's a poor example, but that's on me. The issue was, like, all of us, let's say non-Asians that didn't wear masks, we all kind of looked at Asian people, are like, what the hell? Like, why are you bothering? Like, what's the big deal, right? And I looked at the masks. I have a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, who actually used to work in the mask industry for fitted masks for like heavy industrial stuff. And he gave me a whole rundown on masks one day, and he was just stitching it up, laughing about the fact that these little cloth masks that everyone's wearing, he's like, it doesn't do anything. It literally doesn't do anything. But what it did do, the most important thing it did, is it had a psychological effect on the public overall, right? And while it had the psychological effect on the public, it actually had a negative psychological effect on our youth, our very young, that in their very young formative ages. We're talking like 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, grade 1, where they're learning social interaction based off of facial expressions. Well, you've got a mask that has 80 micron pore versus a virus that is 1 micron, and you're now covering up kids' faces, and they're losing things like empathy. So the psychologist right away came out and said, you know what, this is going to have an effect on human beings' ability to show empathy for one another. These kids are going to not be able to understand facial expressions, and social interaction is going to be impaired by the fact that we're taking the most non-vulnerable population of our society, which is the young children. We're going to cover their face and further impair their social development and their ability to have good interaction and empathy with other human beings, right? So we did this to our youth, and we locked them down. And really, if you look at all the numbers right across North America and the West, the children were not in any significant risk to COVID. They were not in any significant risk.
Yeah. So let's back that up, because there's been a bunch of studies. McGill University did a study. Mask Kids Are All Right is the name of the study, and it's a very interesting one, and I encourage you to read it. I talked about the fears that mask wearing in children lead to suffocation, developmental delays, but the data points found that none of that is true. And I'm happy to send you the article. Again, McGill.ca. The title of the article is COVID-19 Health and Nutrition. Masks Kids Are All Right is the name of the article, and the numbers in it were staggering. They were like absolutely staggering. Not only did kids not mind wearing them, they thought it was cool, a lot of them, and a lot of the fear that was put on them was from the parents. The parents, and please read the study. Again, I'll send it to you. Child's respiratory system wasn't perfectly comparable to an adult's. Adults know that masks are not death traps. Surgeons and dentists don't drop dead from wearing them in a day. A lot of people wear them, and it was how you talk to your kids about it, where you're going to go there. The claims of psychological harm were largely, if not completely, unbased and put on them. In fact, a professor named Eva Chen, a developmental psychologist at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, wrote a huge piece about it in the Times in 2020. There's no evidence that children growing up in those cultures were any worse at recognizing emotions, face, anxiety, or anything. And that was a Chinese study that was done because people have been doing it for years and years and years over there. So there are there. Yeah, I'm happy to do it. Yeah. You know what? And I'll send it to you right now.
You also know that during the times of the lockdowns, domestic violence had a massive uptick.
Huge.
Huge. Alcoholism, drug abuse was a problem. Domestic violence was a problem. Violence against overdoses were. The suicide rate in Toronto after the first year was up 40% just alone in the city of Toronto. 40% suicide rates from lockdowns. And people losing jobs, people losing relationships, people refusing to sit down and actually have a conversation. And then you get the RCMP commissioner, that donkey. She's decided she's going to set up a snitch line to get you to rat on your neighbors if you have more than 5 people. I know. It's just brutal, right? Like, very, very good there,
I laughed
Gestapo.
my dick off. So there are parts of this. So listen, let me just see. And I DM'd you the article actually, so you can have again, McGill.ca, the masked kids are all right, his name of it. So you have it in your inbox. That part. So the snitch line, and I will agree with you. And dude, there has been the ridiculousness of some of the minutia that surrounds just trying to do what's right for your neighbor and yourself and your family. The snitch line, call us. If your neighbor's having a party and you see more than 4 people in their house, dude, that's the stuff that drove me fucking crazy. And so again, common ground with 2 different individuals where we're arriving at the same point, which is like, hey, listen, live and let live. Do what you got to do. Take care of yourself and your family. Bring the temperature down. But I agree with you that there are several examples from the government who have handled this as I believe in every capacity in both situations, in federal governments and in provincial governments across this country. They have found ways to use it to fuck with you. To fuck with me, to fuck with the rules, to fuck with politics. I mean, I'm watching. I don't know if he's your boy, Pierre Poilievre. Do you like him? Do you like that guy?
I haven't decided yet.
He's honestly, a douche. Let's not vote for him. You and me will do a team vote.
So,
No, but Pierre Poilievre is using the pandemic and fear behind the pandemic. What's that? No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, apparently I like to make governments all on my own, apparently. Right. That's the narrative that's out there about me from Ottawa. You know, I had one little sort of misstep in the way I said something. And next thing you know, everybody in the world that's watching this thing is going ballistic when there was a clear intent of what I was trying to say. It was I think on the February 8th, we did a press conference and a live stream. And I said, I've got a table. You guys every party, or if Trudeau doesn't want to sit down and talk, how about the Conservatives, the NDP, the Bloc? I don't care. Come and sit at a table. And what I said was, form a coalition. What I never said was, hey, I'm going to form a coalition with you. What I wanted was for those people to sit down together and say, hey, let's go deal with this guy in his ridiculousness. I never was trying to, and the next day I had to come out and say, look, what we want is a democratic process. We don't want this to be subverted. And yet people took it and went absolutely ballistic and tried to twist my words of what I said. It's not what I said. It was not what I intended to say. It was twisted badly by the media. I never had any intention of, becoming part of a coalition. I wanted the government to form a coalition, in which, by the way, secretly Justin Trudeau and the NDP had already done during the convoy. And then I got accused of trying to start a coalition government. It's like, no, I don't want to be part of your government. I want you people to get off your asses and do your opposition party job and go deal with this shithead. But instead, people said that I was trying to form a coalition. It's like, no, that's not what I said at all. That was not even the context. And I even said, we don't want to be involved in the internal mechanisms. What we want is for you to come and sit at a goddamn table and listen to us. That's all. We wanted to talk, and they refused to do it.
What do you say to the military men and women who have, because a lot have weighed in here, have texted me and called you a traitor? What do you say?
I don't care. I don't. It doesn't matter to me that those particular veterans say that, because I first and foremost do not represent all veterans. V4F, we have about 2,000 members of veterans only that see things from our point of view. Many of them are vaccinated, many of them are not. But what's interesting is there's 1,000 Canadian military members right now that said, no way am I doing that. And they were kicked out dishonorably, kicked out of the military, because they said, yeah, we've been through it with Methloquin. We've been through it with other stuff. I ain't doing it with this. And so forget it. I ain't doing it.
But isn't that when your
job
description changes?
That's $1 billion.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, like
but
your
$1
job
billion
description
worth
changes
of
with
training.
the. Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
but the job description changes with that $1 billion worth of training, right? Like job description is, hey, listen, you got to get vaccinated because of X now. It's just, isn't that part of the job description in public health, public service?
No, because again, this has to go back to
Well, you
that.
think
Like I
it's
said
flawed?
before,
Yeah.
I think it's very flawed because when we look at unlimited liability, like I said in the beginning, you can't order me to go play in traffic down Yonge Street. You can't make that order, which is where people stood their ground and then said, I don't believe that your order for me to partake in this is a lawful order because of the Canadian laws. I think that's an illegal order. I'm not going to follow it. And so they asked for an exemption. They did the administrative process. They were denied unless they were a doctor or a lieutenant colonel and above. They were denied an exemption. And so people said, so going back to your veteran friends that think I'm a traitor, what I'd like to know is why? Why do you think, justify to me why you think that I am a traitor to my country? Because I was going to the government protesting, which I had a legal right to do, which these veterans should look at the Constitution. It's actually in Section 2 that says that I have a right to legally protest. So what is it exactly that these veterans are even in the military fighting for, trying to defend, if they're not going to defend people's right to actually have a protest, which a judge agreed with? So they want to call me not a terrorist,
Traitor.
A traitor. Go ahead, but it's based on the CBC's talking points. It's not based on their own ability to think for themselves.
Okay, so
and that's the problem.
And I would insert that from your side, absolutely. I would insert that the reason why they probably call you that name is because you were one of the faces of the convoy that was attached to the MOU that was about replacing a duly elected government.
Yeah. So you got it's a great question. A great question from the realist PJ about the MOU. I can tell you, and I'm going to be very careful because I know that this is going to be something that comes up at the public inquiry. So I want to be very careful about this, what I say, right? I personally did not agree with the MOU. Several people did not agree with the MOU. There was a small group of people who participated in the MOU. The vast majority of us on our side spoke to them to get them to retract it, which they ended up retracting. It was a very isolated small group of people that wrote the MOU independent of the convoy. And there were also other groups that actually wanted to do more things. And we said, no, we are here for one thing only, end the federal mandates. That's it. Not overthrow the government, not change the government.
Yeah, that's what Bridget Belton was all about. That's what turned her off. She said when everybody started kind of getting in behind the scenes and doing the shit, she was out. But to that point, that MOU, when did you know that? Like, because you showed up under the auspices that this is what you guys were doing. Like, whether or not you agreed with it or not, you still went. And there's like this old adage, you know, it's the same thing with like the dude that showed up with the Confederate flag and the Nazi flag and all that shit. Is that if you're at a dinner party and a Nazi shows up to the dinner party and there's 20 people but only one Nazi, you're still at a Nazi dinner party.
Yeah, exactly. You get painted with that one particular person.
As you should, because you're allowing that person to be there. Correct.
If you allow
so my
that
point
person
is that that MOU was about which is why I'm trying to explain the traitor comment. I don't have I don't have an agreement with it or not. I'm not a veteran. I hold you all in the same respect in the service that you've given this country, all that stuff. But understanding where that traitor comment came from, it came from the idea that a guy who was paid to protect democracy in this country was ready, willing, and able to go and subvert it.
So let me clarify that because I don't agree with that characterization. Because what I can tell you for a fact, and I won't speak for any other person at the convoy, but what I will tell you for a fact, and I will even say this if asked about it at the inquiry, what I'll tell you for a fact is when I learned of the MOU, it was already after it had been made public. And the moment I learned of the MOU, because I would have done everything in my power to stop that from actually being made public. And when I learned about it, I actually went to the one person that I knew that was heavily involved in that. And I said, you have to retract that now. You have to take it back, because if you don't, we're going to denounce it right away. The next day it was actually pulled back, and it was, to the best of their ability. I mean, the genie was out of the bottle, right?
Yeah.
But it was retracted the next day. And I won't speak for anyone else, and I won't say who I was talking to, but I can tell you with absolute certainty, I had this conversation and I said, that must be retracted. Okay. That is not what we're here for at all. That is a complete subversion of what we're here to do. That is a distraction that has nothing to do with the convoy. That is your own agenda, and we're not playing with it. But we've never had an opportunity to actually talk about this, right? This is the first time I've ever spoken about the. I'm like, yeah.
I know, and I'm super grateful for it. But that's because like the heat around this and all the people around it, like you know, you weren't Tom Marazzo. You were legitimately the worst parts of that. When you see guys like Pat King, which by the way, did he smell weird? Pat King, did he smell funny?
I didn't get that close to him. I don't know. I get
this feeling that he smells weird.
I'm sure some days I did too. I was so bloody busy all the time.
Ripe, yeah, we're all ripe.
Ripe.
But like you take on, and that was the Nazi dinner party thing. You take on the reputation of the worst elements of what you are, or what you're doing, or who you're with. You always do as people. And I guess that's another question I would ask. And you look back on it. You look back on the chaos, you know, the quality of life impact that has happened to you. Yeah. Do you feel like, even just through this conversation, I guess maybe this is the question, that there's an opportunity for you to learn from this, be a little different, be a little better, walk away from, you know, this chaos? And like, is there any part of you that wants this to end, grow vegetables, have good relationships with people, build a house, all that stuff? And would you do things differently next time? Are you embarrassed by any of this or no?
That's a great question.
I'm not embarrassed. Easier than this.
Yeah. Oh God, it would absolutely be. I am not embarrassed about anything. And so just so people know, and you know, I'm actually writing the book about this, and I have a couple of objectives with this book. I'm pretending like there's a GoPro on my head, that if the GoPro didn't see it, it didn't happen in the book.
Is that it? The People's Emergency?
Yep. That's what the book is. Yep. So what I am writing the book, my version of it. It is not about how great Tom is. It is about walking people through what we were thinking, what we were there to do, why we were involved, why we made certain decisions, and really just to explain it. And I absolutely will highlight in this book the things that we did wrong, or that we didn't do very well. And especially me, the role that I played in it. I don't view it as, you know, 100% success, because when we left Ottawa, the mandates were still in place. We never got what we were there to do. The police came in and smashed it up. So I think what's important is that, you know, this book for me is not about making Tom look good. This book is just telling my version of what the truth is, and the decisions that I either made or I influenced, and why I was doing this. And what was the sort of chaos behind the scenes. And I want to kind of contrast that with what we thought the police were thinking, or the city was thinking, right? I'm trying to make this as truthful as possible from my side of the story, and to talk about the experience. I'm not trying to make it sound like, you know, I'm somehow omnipotent, when I'm not. I made mistakes. I absolutely made mistakes. But the situation fundamentally evolved constantly. And the challenge with all this stuff was every day was a new issue. You know, every day I got blindsided by like the MOU kind of a thing, or, you know, there was an accident, there was an event, something happened, right? You have to be reactive, but also proactive. And it's hard to be proactive when you're constantly being reactive to a fundamentally changing situation. What I tried to do, and I stated this on a daily basis to the police and the city, was that we were trying to make this as safe and responsible as we possibly could, and minimize the impact of the people of Ottawa, but keep up the pressure on Justin Trudeau and his cabinet. That's what the objective was. We wanted to end the mandates. That's all we wanted. We would have gone home. We would have gone home if he would have finally come out, talked to us, and said, okay, you vaccinated or unvaccinated, you're all the same. We don't care. We're going to leave you alone. We're just going to leave you alone. And we would have all gone home. That's what we were there to do. But that was our particular issue for this particular moment. What happens if in the future It's about a big social issue that the people that hate me right now, they're going to support. They're going to be going, oh, I remember there was a truck convoy that went to Ottawa. Maybe I'm going to go shit in the streets on Wellington Avenue and do all sorts of nasty things, right? So this is the thing. Like, this is not just about COVID. This was about upholding our charter rights and our fundamental rights as human beings in this country as well. And like it or not, we were still fighting. So let's say 3 vaccines, 4 vaccines. Finally, people say, I've had enough. I'm not doing it anymore. But Justin Trudeau says, too bad, you need 6. Yeah. Well, guess what? We stood up and we said, in the early days, you're not doing this anymore. And people that didn't support us are going to get mandated more of this trauma that they're stopping us from trying to stop.
Yeah, maybe, but those are hypotheticals, you know, and living in a hypothetical world is odd. And so, you know, dealing with the facts of the matter and I get what you're saying is,
but all laws, mistakes. All laws are about the future. All laws are to stop things from happening in the future. But when they do happen, that's where you have the punishment side to of a law. You've got, don't do this in the future, because if you do, we have a punishment attached to it. So all of this stuff we were doing was for today, but it was also for tomorrow. It's also for other generations.
You know what? And let's 2 things is let's kind of figure that out for a sec, because you're trying to figure out something for the rest of Canada.
Yeah.
Based on a reality that only, as you say, 6 million people share.
Yeah.
That's categorically unfair, is it not?
If the other 32 million people in this country said we shouldn't be targeting those other 6, we should leave them alone. Just leave them alone. I took the vaccine. It was good for me. I'm okay with my decision. I feel that I'm safe. I feel I'm protected from contracting or getting it worse, but leave the other people alone.
Yeah, but you do understand the other people.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, your reality is very different. Your reality is, I don't believe that it's as bad as people are saying it is, and I think it's a tool, right?
Yeah.
Their reality is, they've either understood science, they're motivated by fear, which I think a lot of people on your side of the ledger are motivated by fear of what might happen if you do take it. So there's a fear motivator there for everybody in some capacity, right?
And I agree with that wholeheartedly. There's a lot of fear on both sides. And if we were able to actually have let the scientists televise open, honest scientific debate amongst that sort of sector of society, that industry, the medical scientific community, if they were allowed to debate in the very early days of this without fear of the CPSO attacking licenses, universities attacking tenured professors that want to talk about the science and inform the public of all of the risks and all the benefits. No, not him. Not him. Okay, but talk about all of the science out in the open, which is what science is supposed to be about. Had the public had that, we probably wouldn't have gone down the rabbit holes. There wouldn't have been a vacuum of let's hear the other side of the story. And some of that information wasn't accurate. You know, so let's have the scientists have the transparency. Why wasn't on the science table? Why wasn't there an opposing view? Our own system of government has a government and an opposition. That in itself is political science. So why can't we have medical science both have debate and you know, disagreement or agreement on the scientific issues? That's why scientists have medical conferences to actually have scientific debate.
I think we got a guy that wants to do a show soon, so we're gonna have to wrap it up. And I'm not done because I want to talk to you again because we got lots to talk about. But I think to answer that question, I believe those debates had been had, and the people that you're talking about that wanted to have a debate were like Dr. Robert Malone and those cats. I think they were soundly rejected by like legitimate tenured professionals that were working as infectious disease experts around the world, like Dr. Eric Topol, one of my favorite guys on the planet. Dr. Eric Topol is the head researcher of Scripps University in the United States, which means he's the head researcher of the most important research organization in the world. And he was the first guy that's like, masks work, but not as well as they're telling us they are, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Vaccines work, but you're still transmissible. And everybody's like, quit saying that. Nobody's going to get fucking vaccinated. He's like, well, it's true. And Dr. Topol very, very simply puts it in no uncertain terms, is that, anybody that tells you this vaccine isn't very important, anybody that tells you that mitigating risk isn't very important in a community setting is not a real medical professional. So those actual debates had happened and continue to happen, and the marginalization of those doctors is compatible with the marginalization of people who believe what those doctors also believe. And again, it's this kind of full circle, that side, this side, but the side that you've chosen to identify with, which is your prerogative, has been debated. It has been talked about. And then when someone says, well, that information isn't right, and the continued push of that information towards the atmosphere of individuals who are trying to decide what to do, the continual push of that information, which wasn't right, which wasn't correct, which was biased to some degree. All of our decisions somewhat are biased. I try really not to I try to make objective decisions, and I try to get that information. But to really kind of reveal that is like, 99.9% of doctors on the planet, infectious disease experts, researchers, all say the same thing. And it's that 1% that you're asking for a debate for. There's really, in my mind, there is no need for a debate. It's just they've been ratioed.
But I can't speak to when you say 99%. I can't honestly, at this point in time, I can't actually come out and say, well, you're right, there is 99%. Why? Because for the last 2 years, we've seen so much insane levels of censorship by all forms of media. I'm talking social media, mainstream media. We doesn't
breed trust.
It doesn't. And we don't know the actual numbers of doctors that were driven underground into hiding because they were afraid that they would lose their practices, lose their staff. They were responsible for their own employees. They did it. They did it to save their businesses, right? And they were afraid to sneak out or speak out. So a lot of doctors and a lot of nurses were driven underground because they were terrified in the beginning because the mainstream media was talking about doctors that had a dissenting opinion. And so they were targeted. That's the story that you would see on the mainstream media, that they would go after doctors. But yet, what does that do? It puts fear into the doctors that wanted to speak out and say, hey, what I'm seeing is not what is being properly reported. All I'm trying to tell you guys is what I'm seeing in my clinic with my patients. And this is from my point of view, this is a fact. I'm reporting it. And now you're censoring me and actually censuring doctors because they're trying to be scientists. So until we actually say, hey, why, like on the Ontario Science Table, there should have been at least one dissenting doctor, at least one. But what they did, they created an echo chamber of doctors that all agreed. There should be some
pandemic.
Well, you can be a doctor and agree there's a pandemic, but you can disagree with what the evolving political therapeutics are starting to be. Yeah. Right. So this is the challenge,
and it is a huge challenge. It's going to take a lot of time to uncover. I think that in terms of settled science and the debate. Everybody's vaccinated, man. Like everybody's got it, and we're all still here and healthy as horses and all that stuff. Yeah. And you might be right. Maybe in 5 years, 80% of the world dies, and we're left with April
for gardening. Yeah. Listen,
I don't believe that to be the case whatsoever.
I hope not. I hope not.
No, well, and there's a group of people that kind of hope that they do. There'd be a lot of room for you guys to move around, but at the same time, Tom, I appreciate being here. And I got to get off and make some room for James. But I'd love to have you back at some point.
I'll come back.
And I will say this, in a world where everybody retreats, right? Yeah. Nothing gets accomplished when you're living in your silo. Absolutely. Nothing. And so I've got lots to chew on today from you. And more importantly, the courage to be able to show up under the circumstances, the way that things have kind of shook out for you. And as a human being, and I can say this about everybody, even if I disagree with them, with the exception of Brian Lilly at the moment. But as a human being, we deserve to have these conversations where you can sit down and go, here's what I think. No, that's bullshit. Here's what you think. No, I disagree. Here's why. Because that's conversations, and no one has them anymore. No one sits down and talks. And there's a lot of people that hate me. There's a lot of people that hate you. And if two guys who, have shown a great amount of distaste for each other can get together and say, okay, explain it to me, have a couple of laughs, find a little common ground, and voice their opinion. And, one of the most amazing parts that came out of this thing is that we both still think each other are crazy.
I'll buy that. I'll totally buy that.
But there's Tom Marazzo. Appreciate you being here, and thanks so much. I got to pee like a racehorse. I don't know about you, but I've had a lot.
And I want to say goodbye to Frank and to Shelley and some of my other fans that have made this so interesting.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it.
All right. Yeah. Thanks.
Take care.
All right.
Tom Marazzo, ladies and gentlemen. That's it for me. I got to make room because my boy Jamesy is trying to get in here and do a show. I want to thank Tom for being here. And listen, you can hate him. You can hate me. You can hate each other. It's not what makes the world go around. What's bad for the hive is bad for the bee. So remember that today. Okay? And be smart. Be smart about how you talk to people, who you talk to. I haven't done an awesome job of it. Probably going to make some mistakes. Probably going to choose those mistakes when it comes to certain people because, fuck, I love doing this. But do yourself a favor. Don't pass judgment. Sit and listen even though you think it's crazy. Have a public discourse about it. And then just hand people rope that they can either tie into a knot, tie in a bow, or do whatever they want with, because that's the purpose of these conversations. Have conversations. James is going to have one coming up next. James DeFiore, Blackballed the podcast. I can't remember who he's got on. Doesn't matter. He had Classified last night. It was a fucking great podcast. James is coming up next. He'll be right here. Have a great day, everybody. And thanks to Tom. And if you hate me, I don't care. If you hate Tom, I don't think he cares. And I don't hate anybody. It's a terrible way to go through life, hating people, isn't it? It really is. And I count hate as currency. Anyway, see you tomorrow. Bye.